Okay, it's 12 o'clock. Let's bring the preliminary budget meeting to order, please. Welcome everybody to this first kick at the 2024 budget. I guess by council, staff's been going at it for many months now. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional territory of our friends and neighbors of the Fort Nelson and Prophet River First Nations. And please be advised that this meeting is available to the public to attend virtually, is being streamed and recorded. So is there any public who would like to speak to this budget online? No? Okay. Have adoption of the agenda, please. Moved by Councillor Andrews, second by Councillor Souls. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. There are no minutes, so we're straight into the budget. So I will turn it over to Mr. Barry.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple things here to start off with before I hand it over to Trevor. As you'd mentioned, that we've been preparing and working on this for quite some time. I'd like to thank all the staff that worked on this. It's been it's a significant undertaking to get under the hood of this, and the process it's well into before Christmas when we started. Trevor, of course, as second time going through this, so it's been through a full budget cycle, and Aaron's taken the lead and helped with that process and helping with pulling the group together and the directors together and whatnot. We've got just a little presentation that will be up as we go through the document, just to aid with council and with the for people who are viewing. So they can follow along and go through the document from front to back, and we'll go as fast or as slow as you wish. The intent with the draft budget, of course, is to get under the hood of the information, ask questions, have council ask any questions you may wish to for information or clarification. And then the intent is that when we're finished the process, which we're hoping to have done by the end of the week, we can go and have a proposed document that can go for a public engagement piece, and to bring back to council at a later date for approval in principle. So this budget, the expenses that you are in the budget are there to maintain the existing service levels. We continue to refine the process itself to have a level of clarity for program from a financial plan perspective, and ability to process the information so it's a little clearer. This document here, you'll see, and Trevor will go through a little more details. We get to some changes. So the recognition of amortization, at the start of the budget process, to provide alignment with year-end financials and actuals. So previous years we've recognized, and Trevor already brought up the last council meeting, we've recognized amortization in the actuals, but we actually didn't budget for it, and this year it's budgeted. The renewal program, or I guess a capital program, which includes renewal, new assets and upgraded assets, and some actual special projects and whatnot. Any areas that we're able to meet the eligibility of the IDCA agreement, we've flagged those projects in here. One of the things that we've discussed before about the IDCA agreement is there's a commitment level that we're required to meet. So we not necessarily required to annualize that commitment level, but over the term of the agreement. So we try to average that out for each year to ensure that we meet those contributions to that agreement. So when you add up the various special projects, capital, the renewal component, the asset upgrades, and the new assets, they meet the requirements. We hit the threshold this year for our contribution to the agreement. And the last bullet here, which I just mentioned, the capital projects are categorized under asset renewal, update, and new assets. Timeline. So we'll discuss the timeline just to see if you have any questions. So currently, obviously, we're into the draft budget to take a look at that. The intent after that is to currently tentatively, we have March 21st booked for the budget open house. And of course, this process here, as we, based on what we're doing currently and throughout the whole process, we're providing what we can publicly to have that level of engagement and answer any questions the public may have. Once we get into late March, we intend to have the public consultation feedback back to council for your review. We expect in early April to start to go through that proposed budget and have draft financials ready by the end of April. And then, of course, May 14th is the deadline to pass the financial plan, the tax rate bylaw. So that's our hard threshold we have to meet from a bylaw perspective. Any questions? All good? Okay, I'm gonna hand it over to Trevor.
Okay, so just one more note about the presentation. As we work through, the presentation will be will take us along through the binder as well. And if we're ever concerned, if anybody's concerned about where we're at in the binder, there's references on the bottom of the presentation slides that will help get us to where we're talking about. And so I'll just jump right in. I'm going to essentially just talk through the report that I prepared that's in the budget binder. I'll try to be brief because the information is there, but I'd encourage you to just jump in with any questions as I walk through it. And so starting, I guess with one of the most important parts of the tax levy, the result of this budget process determines what we need for the municipal tax levy and what that is compared to previous years. So we're looking at about 1.4, just under $1.4 million increase in the tax levy from 2023. And although this slide isn't in the budget binder, it's a way of looking at what activities we undertake have impacted that change. So this is a waterfall diagram that basically takes us step by step to determine where that 1.4 million change occurs. And so we know within operations, within our general operating activities, the impact of changes is about 1.5 million. Then through special projects, changes in the way we've both budgeted and funded, special projects shows a decrease of the 83,000 and so on for each main activity type that we undertake. One of the things that we'll notice when we look at the budget overview document is that this is aligned with those activity groups that we've broken out our operations into. So getting into the report and just past some of the preliminary or introductory information that describes some of the categorizations that we're using and things like that, we get into the tax levy and how that's actually determined. So we generally start with all of our expenditures and then less all of our funding to determine what that tax levy is. And the first table breaks that down by category, and you'll recognize these categories in the other reports that we look at, like the operating reports where we talk about salaries and we talk about contracted services and those other things. Inventory is new this year as well, where we're proposing to purchase inventory related to asset renewal. So that's a new line item that we see, as well as the amortization that was has been mentioned before. So those are essentially the high level details about how we get to that increased tax levy or to the tax levy. and what the changes were. The next few slides and tables are more details about that tax levy. First of all, one of the things that we use or we look at or consider is the impact of a change in what our proposed tax levy is going to be. So this slide here just looks at the current general municipal tax levy is just under 18 million. If that were to decrease by 100,000, the impact on, for example, residential property owner in town would be a decrease of $1.86 per $100,000 of assessed value. So it just to help us make comparisons as we're considering the impacts of changes throughout the budget. The assessment values are detailed in the report, both by town and area A and area B, and then by the various classes. There's a high-level summaries on the presentation before you. What we did see overall in assessment values in the Northern Rockies was an increase of about 5.5%. That's certainly not consistent in any given class, but that's the average. Yes.
So back on page 9, it says the current approach, so it's municipal taxation, and then the tax levy is composed of 4, oh, sorry, Mayor, I didn't. Imposed by the municipality. And then it says there's general municipal tax, the new service tax, the town capital tax, and fire protection service area tax. And then the sentence says the current approach is to apply any necessary change in the tax levy to the general municipal tax. So why wouldn't you make any changes to those other 3 categories?
We will. That's actually something that is going to be looked at probably starting this year. It hasn't, I guess, it hasn't been absolutely necessary, but and that's why we haven't necessarily undertaken it. The changes that could occur relate to basically how the NRN came to be and the requirements under the order and council that created us, and the impacts that we have to maintain with regards to area A and area B.
Yeah.
Essentially what we're going to be moving towards is a more holistic look at how the tax levy is applied. But until that work happens, we simply apply it to the general municipal levy.
Okay, and follow up. Do you have will this be for the next budget season that you hope to get to looking at these other areas, or is that like a 5-year plan, or do we know?
I don't think it's going to be ready for next year. It entails a lot of work with regards to deciding whether we're going to introduce local service areas or how we're actually going to tax, and that work hasn't been started yet. But it will result or be required to be represented by bylaws and other types of work. So yeah, it's not going to be done for next year.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll add, there's a special project request in here on the general government around sustainable service levels, and that's a component of it also, because it's reviewing all the various funding mechanisms that we have for options that we review with council to determine how do you want to fund the various services that we provide, and that goes in that's, and I'll speak to it more when we get to that particular project request, but that's a component also. There's a lot of work in the background and a lot of review and process with council. It's not like a one and done piece. It's a significant amount of review with council to have, also from a policy direction in terms of how do you want to fund the various areas that we provide services, which could be service fees and charges, service areas, whatnot, right? General taxation. Council has typically in the past wanted to go for general municipal taxation. And as part of this process, we'll get under the hood of that and talk to this council about, what is this council's desire in terms of how you want to fund some of those areas. So it's a fair amount of work in the background.
Okay, and so we were just looking at the assessment values table. The next one within the report and presentation is the converted assessment values. And this is essentially sort of part of the math in how we apply the tax across the classes based on the multiples that we determine. So in the converted table, this is actually just specific to the general municipal tax levy, because the other taxes don't have the same multipliers. So it gives you an example of sort of how we get to the base in order to apply that levy and get the rates we need. And the last one is the distribution of the municipal tax levy by property class, and shows where the impact of the change occurs as well. So for residentials, we're showing that increase in tax levy, approximately $40,000, is applicable to residential property owners. Okay, and so expenses and transfers, just one part of the overall method for determining the tax levy. This is, we've saw it earlier in the slide deck and the presentation. We separate it out so that we can start to talk a little bit more in detail about these specific categories. A couple that I would like to mention in general as they impact the organization as a whole. We've talked about amortization. I would put it out. Is there any questions there? It's a large amount, has a high impact. Is there anyone that wants to dig a little deeper into the meaning of it, or? Okay. A couple of other items, the inventory, again, we'll talk more about that when we get into the asset renewal program. And then the transfers to reserves is another one where we're seeing a large increase. And that's due to a recognition of higher investment income, where we're budgeting for about $2.5 million of interest income on our cash balances, and approximately $2 million will be transferred or attributable to reserve fund balances.
Say that again.
So basically, we're going to earn about $2.5 million budgeted on our cash balances. So that's what's in our bank account. And then we apply that or attribute it to the various components of that cash, what that cash represents. And so our reserve funds are approximately $40 million. So they get that portion of the interest earned. We contribute that to the reserve funds
In a proportionate manner.
based on the balances. Yeah. It's almost like the reserve funds are treated as if they're their own bank account, earning their own amount of interest. The funding and transfers, the other side to the equation. Again, the two primary changes that we'll see at the organizational level are that large increase to investment income. We had previously been budgeting just under 300,000, and that bumped up. So the increase is around 2.2 million. And then the increase of transfers from general surplus, which is related to amortization, where we're essentially funding amortization from general surplus. Yes, I will mention. So, and there's also a new little one on or the donations of $500. And although it's relatively minor, it's more about trying to be as transparent as possible. We hold some funds for the cemetery trust, I think around $30,000 right now. And the interest earned, similar to interest earned on our other funds, the interest earned on that is we're allowed to put it back into operations to try to offset some of those costs. So it comes back to the NRM from the trust as a donation. In past years, that wouldn't have amounted to very much, and so it hadn't been picked up on before.
At risk of muddying the waters on amortizations, I'm gonna go there. So we're accounting for amortization now, where we never have before. So this is the first year we're doing. So my understanding of amortization is that we're accounting for the use of a asset, tangible asset that's already been purchased. So the money's been expended already. So we've bought whatever it is. And in that particular year, the wear and tear and or the amortization amounts to X, whatever we're allowed to, based on formulas, I guess. And the example that you're giving here is, you know, you've got a vehicle that costs you so much per mile that it's driven. And so if it drives so many miles this year, that's what the amortization is that particular year. So help me to understand why it needs to come out of general surplus again. Why you're accounting for it in general surplus when the money's actually been, you're accounting for money that's been spent already. So why does there need to be that? Help me with the bookkeeping piece, please.
Sure. So when we do make that original purchase of a capital asset, let's just say it's a building for $100,000. That cost actually is allocated as a part of our general surplus. So we call it invested intangible capital assets. And so that 100,000 we'll say is part of general surplus. It's called invested intangible capital assets. And then we look at the amortization. So for a given year, let's say $10,000 is determined that was the use of that asset. So when we say general surplus is funding that amortization, what's actually happening is invested intangible capital assets is decreasing by 10,000.
Gotcha. So it's being put in at time of purchase and pulled out for amortization.
Exactly.
There's no more actual cash changing hands there.
No.
Gotcha. Thank you.
And just to add too, is that in previous years, the amortization was reflected on the financial statements.
Right.
It wasn't the budget. So if
Right.
you looked at budget, it was zero. Actual would have been whatever that value was.
Right.
So this year we're showing it in the budget process from the very beginning. So it's always been part of our financials. It's just part of the reason was never part of the actual budgeting process.
All right.
That's correct.
So the next one is where we start to throw a lot of numbers at you. The budget overview by activity group. And this report has changed significantly from prior years. It's essentially this report and the following report that replace our previous year's overview document. We've shown a collapsed version of historical information for 2022 and 2023, and then an expanded version for 2024. And this is where we see that overall view of each of the activity groups that we undertake our operations in. So there's operating with our general operating, special projects, major maintenance, as well as grants to groups. And then you'll see the 3 capital related activities: asset renewal, asset upgrade, and new assets. And this view is interesting as well, where we show revenues by their type the category. And then we show expenses by the service area or departments. And that's a presentation that we'll also see in our financial statements. So it will give a tie to what we're going to see in a month or so when we present draft financials. But it also directly links to how our directors are going to be speaking to their budgets as well. And I'll just mention as well, the tax levy and how we get to it is that bottom line. So where the tax levy is actually property taxes, we don't include it in that property tax line in revenues. We break it out to show what our activities are impacting or how they're making an impact on the tax levy. So the second big report there is similar in this, but we're looking at it by service area or department. But the same presentation with regards to revenues, but this is where we get to see the expenses by type. So that's where we start to see the salaries, wages, and benefits, contracted services, etc. And we'll also get to see this view when the directors get into their operating budgets as well.
This is budget to budget comparison, not budget.
That's correct. So properties. So sample properties, I had some trouble with the sample properties spreadsheets. You've had to update those a few times in your binders. I do apologize for that. So I'm fairly confident now that I've got the numbers working right. The sample properties are an interesting perspective as well. We're taking a set of real properties from the municipality and looking at what those properties have attracted as levies versus what our proposed tax levy is going to, how it's going to impact them. We've got also a few samples as well, just for example purposes. One of the ones that we do is we take this sample property and we actually apply an increase to the assessed value based on what BC assessment describes as our average increase for residential properties. And then we just look at what that would do for that sample property. So BC assessment says in our area, the average residential home increased by 3%. And what that means to that average home from a tax levy perspective is it increased by 2.4% for municipal taxes and 2.6% overall. One of the things, and I'll just mention it might be a little bit into the weeds, but with the sample properties, because we don't know what those other tax rates for collected on behalf of others are yet, those are last year's actual rates and they're not estimated for 2024. How's the pace? Okay. Okay.
I think we're just about there. Yes. I think we're right on section 2 now.
Let's see. Okay. Do you want me to share that, or do you want to? Yeah, please do.
Okay.
I'm just gonna note there's lunch. So I don't know, because we're gonna start moving into the meat of the budget at this point. So I don't know if you want to grab lunch I also noticed that, I don't know, Leslie, if you've been able to swap out your pages. There was a bundle there at your desk. So before we get into the kind of decision-making points of the meeting, just make sure that you're that you've swapped your pages out so that you're looking at the current information. And I don't know if you want to grab some lunch or wait. It's up to you.
This is probably a good time to grab some lunch. We've got the introduction into it now. Like I say, we're starting to get into the meat of it. So let's take 20 minutes and grab some lunch, and then we'll get back at it. Okay, thank you everybody for indulging us in that little break. We are back into the preliminary budget meeting and our discussion. I'll turn it back over to staff, please.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. So now we're going to get into the overview of the operating section. We'll start with 3 reports, the operating budget. So this is just operations. And then we've got the second report is the operating expenses by category, again, for the organization. And we have a third report, which is the operating revenues by category, again, for the organization. The expenses report and the revenues report, they have a different format than the overall report in that we're comparing the current year budget against the prior year budget and identifying specific changes within the primary types of expenses that we incur. So salaries, contracted services, and utilities. And so now for personnel, I'll pass it over to Erin to speak to that.
Thanks, Trevor. So you'll notice on the organizational overviews and summaries that the personnel budget is experiencing approximately $990,000 change from 2023. So this slide just lays out what those high level categories are and the rationale for that change. So I've grouped them into approximately 3 areas. First one is personnel changes. So this is budget items that are impacting by our FTE count. So the first one is we are budgeting for 2 summer students for this year, 1 in the airport and 1 in corporate services. We also in this budget have included the addition of a fire prevention officer over at Fire Rescue, and it's been budgeted for a 6-month period. And that's only because we...
This slide not in the package?
Yeah, I can't find it in the binder here. Where?
Oh, it's not.
Okay.
It's not. The numbers are. Yeah, so if you go to tab 3, the very first page. I am just kind of summarizing the bottom section where it says salaries, wages, and benefits, 990,000. These are the numbers that make up 990,000.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Sorry about that. So, sorry, 2 summer students for both the airport and corporate services. Summer students are about approximately $30,000 impact each. Your fire prevention officer, the impact for 6 months, because we just budgeted for the amount of time that we felt they would be in place for this year. We increased our paid on call firefighter hours, so that added about $28,000 to the budget. The regional health recruitment liaison, increasing the FTE to 75%. And altogether, personnel changes account for about 178,000 of that 990. The next area of that 990, sort of grouped everything into one called base wage adjustments. These are the negotiated and contractual wage increases, and it resulted in an approximate change of $596,000. This is both unionized, non-unionized, hourly out at the airport, everything from programming staff, firefighters, that's all in. The next large category I grouped as group benefits and statutory benefits. So these are our health benefits, Blue Cross. This is also our CPP, EI, employer health tax, pension contributions. That amounted to about a $217,000 of that 990. So what's not shown on that page there in the binder of the operating budget is some of the offsetting revenues. So there is approximately $77,000 in revenue that we are utilizing from our Community Resiliency Investment Grant. And that is offsetting 50% of our, one of our RDP positions and 15% of the fire prevention officer. And that's for work associated with the Fire Smart activities. So when you account for that offsetting revenue, the net change to personnel will be about $913,000. Are there any questions? Nope.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. And I'll speak briefly to the changes in contracted services. The directors will be speaking to this in more detail and available to answer more detailed questions, but at a higher level, the increase that we're seeing at an organizational level of just over 900,000, it's not a straight line. We're seeing some things go up, some go down. So these are just the highlights. Equipment, building maintenance and repairs, up approximately 83,000. This will be primarily offset with funds from general surplus, as it was an item that was expected to be expensed and incurred in 2023. Contract changes with regards to animal welfare and the landfill are really a couple of the big ticket items. But also what's included in the increase is the transfer of the golf course and track into operations from grants to groups. So we see it increasing in operations, we see it decreasing in grants to groups. Our audit costs, we budgeted for an increase there of around $10,000. Insurance and training and development all told about $100,000 increase. And again, some of these, especially with regards to training and development, are partially offset because they were budgeted, taxed for in 2023, but they didn't occur. So we expect to have them done in 2024. So we've used some of those previously taxed funds to offset. And
So that's, I'm sorry, Trevor. It's important to note too, like these are expenses that we're showing here, so they're not, you're not seeing the offset revenue. So when you look at, well, I'll click on the golf course. When you look at a $210,000 expense for the golf course, that's the expense to operate the greens component of the golf course, which doesn't reflect the revenues. But once we get into the rec budget, you'll see the revenues for that. So you'll be able to determine what the cost is, especially if you're comparing from one year to the next. So it's just important. It's similar to the personnel budget of 990. You're not, that's the full expenses that we would expense out. It doesn't recognize, obviously, the revenues are on the other side of the equation.
thanks, Todd. And I think that is an excellent point. It's perhaps something that our presentation doesn't do a fair job making it easy to see that. But we are starting along that line. With one of the new reports is that the revenue change year over year. And just to mention again, a couple of the things that we've seen, the increase to 2.5 million for investment income. You'll see that detailed on the tab 3 operating revenues by category. And you'll also see what Scott was mentioning, that revenue for the golf course. So not necessarily easily tied together. It's represented, but that's what we have there. Another point to mention is we did pay a bit more, we've taken a closer look at some of our revenue line items from past years and just to try to determine, are they still accurate and can we get to a closer or more realistic level with our estimates? And one of the areas we looked at was at the airport. And so what we found was we decreased some of the revenue because it wasn't expected to be achieved going forward. So that's a bit of an offset compared to some of the other items that we'll see throughout the budget. And that's really it for the overview. We've got the next tab is a list of the special and major maintenance projects, but those will all be addressed directly when you get to speak with the directors. And so now we get into the details of the service areas, and I'll start with a brief discussion of general government services. And again, this is general government is somewhere where we generally see some of those large items that we're starting to recognize as well, like that increased revenue that happens in general government services, and then it gets transferred out to those reserve funds and to the cemetery trust and things like that. So we have seen that increase in investment income in general government. But again, the transfers from general surplus are there to offset the amortization, and that's pretty much it. Yeah. Well, that's a great question. Throughout the budget binder, the reports will indicate on the bottom for decision, and those are the decision points that we would be looking for, whereas the other information is supportive in nature. And of course, it's always council's prerogative to get into further detail where necessary. But as a general approach, you'll see for the greens, these would be for decision. And then when we get into special projects, each special project is a decision point on its own, and so on. Jay, can I?
The question, Council Gerwin, please.
Yeah, thanks. So on tab 5, page 3, so operating budget, general government, like I read the page before, but there's a $50,000 difference. Is it $50,000? Why? Yeah. Why has like under expenses for council, the budget we're budgeted for $771,393. And last year was $721,240. I hate place value, just so you know. So why that increase?
That is your increase on your regional health
My
improvement
wage?
liaison.
Am I getting an increase in my wage? No.
That is your the 17-hour to 30-hour a week regional health recruitment liaison. That's the impact. Because
So that's being coded to council?
council holds the health advocacy budget line within the larger council several lines.
Okay.
Go for it. You're good now, Jay.
It'll break out later.
If you look at tab 5, the white pages is the legislative budget detail. So the last page of that package is all the health service initiatives. So currently, everything from the recruitment liaison and those activities, any of the hosting activities, the traveling for attendance to health conferences, scholarships, and the housing initiatives, as well as all the ready incentives. That bundle of services and programs is all within council's legislative budget. The thought being that potentially moving forward, that's not the best way, not the best place in the budget to keep it. But last year being a transition year of pulling all of that out of the regional hospital district, we put it among council's other initiatives because there was a lot of change at that time as well with the Ready just kicking up and things like that. So that's where it sits currently. So the total value of those activities are $396,000.
What would it take to change that out and put it under a line of its own called health initiatives?
Not hard.
Not that hard to
No.
do that?
No, no.
Because really that's,
Yeah.
it's much more transparent that way than people, because it's really not our responsibility, right? Though we're doing it and we've taken that on. I understand why you put it there in the first place, but to be completely transparent with the public, it should be under health initiatives on its own, right? So people know exactly what we're spending on.
And we discussed that. It's just when we made the change, I mean, the only change to it this year compared to last year was the increase, I guess, to
Yeah.
that position. And we discussed, because that position is falling under RDP, especially with the increase of hours and whatnot. So what we wanted to do is discuss that with council, because we would like to have it all rolled up under one line item wherever it sits. So then you can look at what the cost of those health initiatives are overall. It's important to be able to see them in one area. So if that's something council wants, it would make sense. We take all the health initiatives and move them under into a different area.
Yeah, I'm good with that. And you think RDP is where because that's where we're managing, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so that makes sense to me. Okay, go ahead.
And then, under contracted services, it says that, the expense for the Resource Municipality Coalition is replaced by the Regional Advocacy Budget. Do we have any information on what that is? Is that, because I don't know, or
Yeah,
I
so-
don't remember if I was given that information.
Yeah, so we brought the money over expecting that and I think it will be, it'll be the, what do we call it? The regional leadership table, which is essentially all the chiefs, all the mayors, as well as the rural directors from the regional district. And we're expecting Dale Bumstead is it right to say supports that table, I guess, from a contractor's perspective. And the chiefs and the mayors and the regional district directors asked him to put a budget together, what that might look like. So I don't know what it'll be. I know there might be something there for us to look at. And so I just thought it would be easy just to take that same money that came out of the coalition and put it into this, whatever it might be as a whole. If we end up not spending it, we'll have to come back to you guys for whether or not you agree that that's something we should participate in, right? That you'll have to understand, because it's right now it's a fledgling group that's just sort of, we've had 3 meetings and we're just trying to figure out how to get everybody in the same place at one time is the first thing. But once we do, what is it that we're going to advocate for? What does the structure look like, and how are we going to pay for it? So that's what that money is there, earmarked for.
Okay, and if it's approved in this budget, I think I heard you say that, we wouldn't move forward. It comes back
Yes.
to council.
Yes,
For membership, right?
for a requirement to actually spend that money.
Thank you. Okay.
Councilor Andrews?
I noticed in the breakdown here of council expenses, we have bursary and scholarships at 2,500. And then through our health initiatives, there's another health scholarships of 4,000. They're 2 separate ones. Okay. I thought maybe it was just part of one of our conversations was amalgamating it all together, but all right.
There was discussion about considering them a government transfer as opposed to a kind of where they are within the operations budget now. But we're still early in that, so we've just left things as is. And we do have a couple we have an administrative scholarship as well as a technical scholarship that comes from the NRM separate from the bursaries. Yep. So, okay, we can walk through the, so there's been, an outline there in the green sheets, the service areas that are included within the general government operating budget. So one of which is council, and the legislative budget detail in the white pages gives you a full kind of idea of what all of those various expenses are within council's budget. There's the executive services budget, which includes CAO, corporate services, and finance operating budgets. Then there's a general administration category, which includes what we term common services. So those are different tools and services that the organization as a whole requires to conduct their business. So it's things like Microsoft Office licenses, postage, stationery. So we hold that budget in one common area. And then town square. So that area is all of our spaces, not only which we occupy, but that tenants occupy within the town square complex. So that's all of their, all the lease revenues go into those budgets, but also the maintenance costs, insurance costs, utility costs, etc. And then the information technology budget, which is pretty straightforward. That's our tech services support. So you'll note that the 7% increase in council's budget. So largely that was the increase in time for the regional health recruitment liaison. There's also an increase in the staff long service awards. So that budget's increased significantly for this year. But it isn't anticipated that that will be required as an annual amount. It's that we have a large number of folks meeting their 5, 10, 15, and 20 and 25 year anniversaries. So it happens to be that we did a lot of hiring 10 and 15 years ago. So it's a bit of a surge in that budget, and we don't expect that that will carry on in years to come. We've also been doing some work in the background to propose some amendments to that policy. So you'll see that coming back in the next while, but we would recommend that the amendment wouldn't take place or wouldn't be active till 2025. That we would just hold the current policy today for this year so that we can meet our budget number and go from there. We had a small increase to the Christmas social budget. So in recent years, we've been really fortunate to have a great turnout, which I think is wonderful, but the cost of the event continues to increase as food costs and such also goes up. So we increased that slightly to ensure that we could fund it this year. And then there was a small increase in the housing budget for the health program, and that's just that we're now fully operating and maintaining 5 properties, whereas we only had 4 last year. You'll see there was an increase in the general administration budget of 6%. So we've been seeing a lot of the software licenses we hold are under contracts, and those have inflationary factors built in year over year. So those are about 4% of that 6. We saw quite a bump in our liability insurance costs, which Trevor spoke to earlier in his presentation. And that's hit council's budget for, and the general admin budget for insurance. And then we've made an increase to the stationery program. So we shifted some of our purchasing practices where things that tend to depreciate quickly, like desktop printers, keyboards, mouse, small hardware, but that's also quite specific to the user. We've begun purchasing it as stationary versus within the renewal program for tech inventory. Just because of such a fast turnaround on replacement and things like that, it doesn't make sense to really consider it a true asset as we would a computer or a large scale photocopier, for example. And then I'll speak to the IT budget, and then Jonathan's going to chat a bit about the town square budget because he manages that. So essentially the IT budget's had a small increase of 3.4% this year. And it really just is a result of our contracted services for IT support. So we do outsource some IT services. And as with anything within that contract, there's inflation built in. So that's what that's all about for this year. You want to pop up, Johnny?
Good afternoon.
Okay, thank you.
For the town square portion of this is the town square facility as a whole. With that, we see a pretty good increase in contract services, which is $26,000. And overall that we've increased the general amount by 3,000 for annual inspections and operational needs in there. We've also seen an increase of 7,000 for heating and mechanical. Overall, a split between some of our lease spaces because we break it down each kind of general in the town square facility. But as a whole, 6,000 building repairs at 2,000 each for it was play school, mental health clubhouse, and service BC on those ones. And then plumbing repairs, a little bit of movement up and down for an overall of 2,500. And then 2,000 for electrical repairs. And there's about 4,800 there for insurance as well. It all falls under the contract services head. Moving over to equipment, materials, and supplies. You see a little decrease in this one. Janitorial and electrical went down by 1,000, 1,500 each, and then heating and mechanical supplies went up. A lot of that stuff we're seeing some issues with some of the life cycle of some of our major like rooftop units, things like that, facilities throughout there, or equipment throughout the facility, to try and upkeep all the operations of this facility houses. And then a little decrease in utilities as well, which I'm going to attribute it to some of the LED upgrades and things like that we've done, because I haven't seen rates go down, but so I'm not blaming those, but and if you have any questions on that.
Councilor Andrews?
Some of the end of life for the rooftop units, do you think some of our air quality in the past few years have anything to do with that?
I don't think you've had any I don't think there has been any air quality issues from it. But we have seen something like we had last year, there was a major heat exchanger failure, which we had to get replaced, which was a pretty sizable purchase.
I mean, like the smoke we've been having over the past couple of years, is that lessening the age of or prematurely aging our equipment?
I wouldn't be able to answer that yes or no. I could see there may be potential with some of that particulate matter getting into the units, but we do have filters in all those units to make sure that it filters out as much as possible. There is potential for maybe a little bit more getting into bearings and belts and things like that for some of the minor pieces of them, but as a whole, I don't think it would have negatively affected it.
Before we go on, I have a question back up on elections. I see that we don't have a reserve for elections where you might be planning for, putting some annually, you put money away, and then the event that you have a by-election in the middle, you're not going into general revenue, you actually have an account there that you can use it. And if you don't use it, if everybody stays, like we hope everybody will stay, then you use it at the main election every 4 years. So we don't do that, or is the cost of an election so small that we just feel that it doesn't hurt our budget that year if we do happen to have a by-election?
I don't think the cost is too small to consider, because this election is actually fairly significant.
Yeah.
It's something that's just we're starting to create a bit of a list right now. I am anyway. And I talk to Trevor about it every other day, I think. Regarding areas of the organization where we can create reserve accounts, where we can help smooth out. So one of them, like when Jaylene mentioned earlier around the staff service awards and whatnot, I mean, instead of having peaks and valleys, try to smooth it out. So this would be another one that would actually potentially hit that list. It's just we don't want to piecemeal. And part of the process this year, we talk about sustainable service levels when we get into that project. Part of that is going to be looking at our chart of accounts also. And during that process of looking at the chart of accounts is an opportunity to look at some potential reserve accounts where we can
Do that sort of thing.
put some funds away to help for either something that's unintended or unplanned, or smooth out costs, because we're seeing peaks and valleys from year to year, seeing a lot of.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah. We do have the financial stabilization account, which is a mechanism that we could use if there was an unforeseen expense that we wish to have access to. So that's more of a general reserve account, but we're gonna be reviewing all those accounts and putting some policy framework together for council's review at a future date for sure.
Okay, thank you.
And so at this point, so that's the general government services operating budget. Before we go into the special projects for general government, which I'm hoping Jay will take us through as well, is there, other than the change that you've noted with regards to the health initiatives getting moved out, was there anything else? Any other questions? Okay, so I will pass it back to Jay to speak about our special projects.
So for the department that rarely has special projects somehow this year, but it was, this budget season, I think there was a lot of discussion and work around aligning where things ought to be. And so there was a couple projects that Public Works has held, in past that when we chatted about them kind of more generally, it seemed that they were projects that had the potential, well, that will impact the organization as a whole. So it made sense to bring them over to general government. So the first, there is the City Works Digital Asset Maintenance Project. So for those of you that have been on council for a number of years, you'll recall City Works was a tool that we had gone through quite a process to evaluate options and selected that as the preferred service provider for our asset management program. So at this point, it's used to give the user a full view, both in the data that sits in the system about an asset, as well as where it's located in a GIS environment, so spatially. And it's over time, it's intended to reflect the life of the asset. So inspections are conducted and the information on its condition is logged in the system. The value is logged in the system. If there's changes or improvements or failures, that's all also tracked in the system. So we've recognized that with changes in staffing over the years, we've got some gaps in our information, and we have a lot of as-built information of our assets that remains with our consultants, our engineering consultants, that needs to get migrated into CityWorks to give us a more complete picture than what we have today. So that's the intention of this project, is to basically get it current and then establish some really good processes moving forward to keep it current. So that's that one. Any questions on that? Feel free to interrupt at any time.
So what are we doing now? It's just knowledge of our employees, and I imagine there's some filing system plus what you've got with the accounts. This will pull it all together.
Correct. Yeah.
And
So right now,
and so general government your department will look after the administering of it. Public Works, actually all departments, I suppose, will have input into it.
yes.
Then you guys will run it as a entire data system, I guess.
Yeah, so the intention is that tech services will, they'll be the custodians essentially.
Right.
So they'll be responsible for conducting audits, confirming that the process for update is occurring. But you're right, data collection happens everywhere.
Right.
So it could be the water operator on the ground with a tablet that's pulling in inspection information. It's intended that as-built will come back from our consultants when a project's complete, and those will be loaded into the system. And then any range of users can access it to view at any point.
So you'll have a real-time value of what your assets are worth, really,
Absolutely.
ongoing, instead of having to pull somebody in every 5 years or whatever to do an evaluation. You've got an ongoing. Okay,
Real time.
I
Yeah.
understand. Thank you.
And right now, yeah, it's not that we lack the information right now. It's just in several different places that it's time consuming to gather it and get that complete picture. Yeah.
We're not as efficient as we want to be based on the program and the intention of the program. So it's a finished implementation of it basically. So we're looking at multiple places to get the data and we want to make, that's the intent of bringing City Works in at the start. And with change and whatnot, it just, we didn't get the implementation fully flushed out. And that's what we want to get done now is to get all that data in the system.
So the next project is the Municipal Asset Management Program. And it was grant driven to some degree, but we looked at this from a service sustainability perspective and looked at a need for doing process mapping and process planning. So realizing that without documentation, we have a really hard time succession planning. We have a really hard time remaining consistent in how we do things. So the first project, which was completed last year, was a process map for process mapping, which sounds crazy, but it basically spelled out how we process map. So it was really, it was a really engaging exercise. And I think it gave us a great framework to now just replicate for whatever process we'd like to document. So we had a few projects that came out of that as a management group, we agreed were really important. So one was around succession planning, but training and development. So how do new directors know what they need to know? You don't know, you don't know what you don't know. So it's, challenging some of us to process map how we perform in our roles, how we do our jobs that required training and areas of knowledge, and getting that all documented for the next generation to come. Another is document control. So it came down to a frustration of where to find things internally. And what we realized was it's a large area of work in how we treat our electronic records. We do really well at paper records, but as we all know, things have transitioned and will continue to. So by and large, what we do for work is all electronic. I mean, you're looking at paper, but it was all created electronically. So trying to come up with a system that works for us, that allows us to manage those as effectively as we manage our paper records. So those are our two big projects this year. Erin's leading up the training and development process map, and then corporate services is leading up the document control or electronic document management process map in collaboration, of course, with the rest of the organization. It's largely, we're half grant funded, I suppose, and then funds that were unused from last year will be used for this year's contribution from the NRM. And then the Sustainable Service Levels Project. So Scott was gonna chat to this one. He mentioned it earlier.
Sure. Well, thanks, Jay. So this project, like the previous two, it's IDCA eligible. Directly linked to council strategic priorities. So when we look at services and the vast amount of services we provided, and it's actually one that started off, one of the changes we made today was actually sitting in Public Works, because it started off as a review of the various asset categories, water, sewer, roads, and whatnot, and those contributions, the cost to provide those services. And then as we got into it, we recognized that sustainable service levels, we need to take a fulsome review of all of our services that we provide and what are the costs to provide those services, and then how do we fund them? What are the options in terms of funding, which isn't just linked to the asset categories of the infrastructure. So we have close to $1 billion of infrastructure that help provide services. Then we have the operational O&M and the staffing that provide those services. But what we haven't done since the rollout or development of the asset management program over 10 years ago is we haven't done a fulsome review of what all those costs are and what are the options to provide funding for those. And that's a conversation that needs to happen with council, but there's a significant amount of work that happens in the background to get that going. And that's right down to the services at the rec center. What's the services you provide at the rec center? What are the costs to provide those services? And then how do you bridge the gap? Because typically it's always been general taxation and very low service fees, which is fine. That's a council decision, of course, but it has to be intentional. right? And I think it's time to get into those, it is time really to get into those discussions. There's been, you know, with the contribution to the various asset categories, there's, which Trevor has a nice little chart or document table when we get into that process later, that information later. There's been, you know, routine updates, but not a fulsome update in what we've seen here, especially lately over the past couple of years with significant inflationary changes or increases. Those funds are under funded essentially. We run the risk of underfunding them to a point where we don't have any funds left, or we can't run in a negative balance. We run out of funds essentially. So we need to take a holistic view of everything to be able to present the council to say, you know, this is the funds required to provide the existing services. Here's what the cost would be to fund 100% through general taxation. Here's the current service fees that help make up some of the funding to you know, if it's water and sewer bills, if it's whatever that might be, service fees for the landfill. Fire department, for example, we have a fire protection area that value or number to that we tax specifically for the fire protection area doesn't represent accurately what the cost is to provide that service. So that it's a significant amount of work in the background, and the intent is to be able to provide that information to council, so your decisions, you can make intentional decisions based on what your priorities are, and have a true understanding what the cost to provide those services. So that's this project here.
Questions about this? Yeah, we did a similar, we called it a core services review, and when I was the mayor in Taylor, and that was a subset of a bigger project that we were working on, which is an organizational review to see if we had all the right people in the right places, and what were the services that we were providing, and what were the resources that we need, because that helps to set your organization is what are the resources you need for these core services that you want to do. Didn't have the capacity to do it internally. It was a contractor led, but it was very time consuming for all the department heads, particularly because they were the ones who sat and really analyzed what they were doing and the resources that they had or needed to do a better job. So are you expecting that this will be done internally, or are you expecting a contractor?
This is contract. So we have a work plan that's been provided. So we have K2L who we've asked to provide the information. They have the history. Good thing with them is we're not having to teach them or tell them what the service we provide, because they've been directly connected with our asset management system. They understand the services we provide. So they've provided a work plan that we've worked through with them, that they would, in terms of what the cost is, and this would be contract out. And of course, we do realize, I mean, we're going to use a fair amount of capacity internally just to be part of the process.
Yeah.
But we have the ability to do it, just not the capacity.
Well, and I like where you're going from the perspective of this being intentional, because that wasn't something that came out of the review that we did in Taylor, that everybody became much more intentional because they were so much more knowledgeable about what was going on and what we were doing and what resources we actually need. So I like that you're actually starting from that place, instead of just, it landing there. So it's good. Thank you.
Anyway, good for that one?
I'm good for that one. If there's any other questions? No. Okay.
And then the last small project was one that we weren't able to complete last year, so we're looking to have it completed this year, is just some refurnishings for Town Square. So the stacking gray chairs, circa unknown, and and the Raven.
Those are Costco specials. What are you
They
talking
are, yeah, and the Raven Room furniture. So we had kind of held off last year as we worked through the Town Square revitalization project, but I think it's fair to say that we can safely purchase furniture and ensure that they're flexible enough that if things change with this building, we can continue to use them. So, and it's likely that the Raven Room will get some use this year. So it'd be nice to have a little bit more suitable furniture up there for folks that end up occupying that space.
If there are no questions on general government special projects, we're gonna move over to James now with protective services, and he'll start his operational review.
Huh? I don't even know what you're talking about.
Oh, wow.
Oh yeah, it has worked out. Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, I get hit all the time, so in my head.
So much I can say.
You just have to know my wife, that's all.
So thank you, Mayor and Council, for letting me present the 2024 emergency services budget. So the protective services operating budget is compressed of the expenses and revenues associated with the following organization activities. So we have the Northern Rockies Fire Rescue, we have emergency measures, animal control, bylaw, 911 emergency services, and the new for 2024, the Fire Smart program that hopefully will be running here soon. So revenues related to the protective services fees and charges have increased a small amount to recognize chargeback revenues associated with and improve emergency measures and the EOC activity related to evacuation planning, which is continuing through the beginning of 2024. Protective services grant revenue of $77,397 has been allocated for Fire Smart to offset personal costs transferred from regional development and planning associated with the anticipated Fire Smart coordinator duties. The overall protective services expenses budget has a net increase of 27%, which is over the 2023 budget, and that's due to a number of factors. So salaries, wages, and benefits. The salaries and wages, as Aaron discussed earlier in the budget, has increased to 20%, which is 327,000 over the 2023 budget due to negotiated and resolved contractual wage increases and increased costs for benefits and mandatory employment related costs. Other budgeted items which have influenced the 24 protect service budget include allocation of the 6 months for the fire prevention officer, which is going to be roughly $101,000 and $700. And we also have an increase of 26,000 for our paid on call wages to bring them in line with other municipalities and cities in the province. And we also have an increase of emergency operations personnel costs for allocation of base wages from the executive operations, which will be 38,000. And 6 months of anticipated EOC personnel on-call expenses. As you're aware of last year, a lot of personnel were on call through the summer season. We're predicting the same thing, so. And that's gonna be roughly 16,000. And with the creation of a Fire Smart budget with 50% cost of a Fire Smart coordinator, which is gonna be roughly $77,000. Any questions up to that point? Our contract services has a 26% increase, which is $115,000 over the 23 budget. This budget increase includes a $56,000 to the animal control to account for the $42,000 for a full year's cost, and the animal welfare services. 17,000 had been committed through the 2023 and 2024 animal welfare service agreement. 14,000 has been increased to the animal control budget as a result to the increase to the base contract. And animal control has increased the weekly patrols and on-call hours. An increase of 38,000 to account for expenses to repair our ladder truck, which broke down on us in January. It was out for 30 days. So we had a lot of engine work done to that. And 10,000 expenses for EOC evacuation planning exercises and the recognition of expenses associated with ongoing EOC evacuation planning. Moving on to equipment, materials, and supplies. You're gonna see a decrease of 12% overall from the 2023 budget for our equipment, materials, and supplies. And a lot of that is with the reduction of 5,000 for the anticipated supply of inventory for the 911 call boxes. And in 2023, we asked for $29,000 extra to get some protective equipment that was on back order. So we don't need that this year, so that's been taken out. Any questions up to that point? And on the next page is just a breakdown of between 2022, 2023, and 2024. Just gives you an overview of the changes. Moving on to tab 8. It's just a summary of special projects. Aaron, did you want to speak to some?
Yeah, I can speak to the first three. So the first special project that's listed is new for this year. It's fully funded by grants from the province, and it was the province providing $40,000 to help meet our obligations with the adoption of the new Emergency Disaster and Management Act. So we've created a special project for that one called Indigenous Engagement, and it outlined in the project profile, you'll see some of the eligible activities that we'll be able to claim towards that, including building agreements, reconciliation and capacity building, planning activities, relationship building, and consultation and coordination with our Indigenous partners for emergency management. The next project is EOC capacity building project. That one is a continuation of a previous year's project, fully funded by grants. And that is a continuation of our efforts to build our EOC capacity through physical acquisition of items and training. So that one is just a continuation, and that one is funded by the UBCM Community Emergency Preparedness Fund. The next one is a new project for 2024, and it's been put into the budget in anticipation. We've been in conversations with FNFN and Prophet River First Nations to do more Indigenous awareness training on cultural safety and humility. So this is a placeholder in anticipation of that project going forward, and it would be 100% grant funded at approximate expenses of $30,000. And I'll let James do the last one.
And the Wild Safe Community Coordinator, Northern Rockies Regional Municipality has been part of that program since 2018. And it's $6,000 to go towards the program, which helps reduce human and wildlife contacts and stuff like that. And that's pretty well the emergency services budget. Any questions?
I have a question, but I think it's aimed more at the director of finance than it is you, because it's about the revenues, and I think maybe this is one of those 4 revenue areas that we have the ability to tax, but we don't actually, well, we do, but not even close to what the actual cost of the service is, right? So I think it was you that pointed out on page 9 there was those 4, and one of them was fire services, which we tax at about $250,000 a year by my memory. And yeah, and yet that's like 1/10 of what fire is actually costing the region and the community. So is that one of the areas that you're looking at, sort of rejigging how this works to actually source the revenue from the area for what it's actually being used for instead of into general revenue? Is that a good example, I guess, of what that, I forget the project, what you called it, what you called it?
Sustainable service.
Sustainable service.
That's part of the scope of it.
Right. Okay, because that makes sense. I mean, at $250,000 when it's costing us almost 3 million, right? Minus revenues, it makes some sense, again, back to be transparent of what it's actually costing us in that particular area.
We had to do the full analysis, which includes, I mean, because we actually have, I mean, it's not all in cost of the fire department, because the fire department provides EMR or first responder services and stuff. But when you just focus on the fire component, we have apparatus, we have equipment that's specific to fire delivery in the fire
Mhm.
services area, which typically would be picked up as your services area, which would,
Right.
your revenues for that service charge would cover the costs, including replacement of your apparatuses and your.
Is there something external to our organization that limits us to how much we can gather there? Like, when I see that, normally it's just consistent, it's because somebody says that's all you're allowed to raise there, so. No, there's nothing, so that's just an internal policy that we've decided to.
It's just something that wasn't, yeah, it wasn't. It's on the radar right now.
Right,
It needs
okay.
to be done, yeah, and now, and honestly, I mean, we have a partnership where we provide a service support also First Nation also.
Mhm.
And they're more than willing to increase the value that what they pay for that service, but at the same time, we gotta be able to demonstrate what the cost is for that service. That's the scope of work, part of it, the rest of the scope of work.
Thank you.
All right, we're gonna do just a little bit of juggling, sorry.
Chief got off
Sorry,
pretty
Counselor
easy.
Greg, did you have a question? Okay. We have to do a little bit of a hop, skip, and a jump over tabs 9, 10, 11, and 12. And you're going to proceed to tab 13. And if you are doing an agenda, it's page 74, but we're going to go and move on to regional development planning.
Yeah, come on. Now the fun stuff.
Well,
All
especially on your street, right?
All right. Thank you, Mayor, councilors, for entertaining me today.
Welcome.
Yeah. Well, it's true, right? Now we're getting to the fun stuff. Although Luann says she's gonna go to the washroom and start talking. Hopefully the rest of y'all can stay. Okay, so if we look at the operating budget for regional development and planning, the first page talks about how we were set up at the beginning of 2023. We have 8 permanent positions that were filled at the beginning of 2023, as well as we hired a local government intern. I think it was in May of 2023. The department now has 9 permanent positions, adding the regional health recruitment liaison position into RDP just recently. We did start the year with 8 permanent positions, and halfway through the year, we saw the retirement of one of our regional development officers. And then that was followed by a vacancy at the land and natural resources coordinator, as well as the corporate development and planning assistant. So despite the fact that we had 3 positions that were vacant, we still managed to look at and undertake over 60 projects and initiatives during 2023. For revenues, we saw, if we look at 2023 to 2024, we see a decrease in our revenues of 31%, which is about 34,700. This is simply just because we were not successful with the local government intern program this year. So that was a decrease in revenue of $35,000. And I seem to have forecasted an extra $300 somewhere for fees and charges through building permits and things like that. I think it was rounding up. So we'll see a little bit potentially increase in revenue. When we look at expenses for 2024, our salaries and wages actually have decreased by 2%. And this is mostly to do with the grant that we'll be applying on to help fund part of the land and natural resources coordinator position, whose job title and job description will be changing here shortly to reflect priorities in around Fire Smart and some emergency management work. Our contracted services increased in 2024 by 19%, so just over $42,000, which is really mostly in part related to the increase of the contract for the Visitor Information Center, as well as some smaller increases in training and development, legal services, and engineering services. And then we saw no change from 2023 for our equipment, materials, and supplies. So overall for expenses, our department budget, we'll see an increase of 1%. from 2023 to 2024.
Question about the Vic Center. Is that contract up? Or are we just agreeing to increase the amount, or was it already written into the contract?
So the contract expired the end of the year, so 2023. And we did sit down and we asked the visitor center to take a look at, to provide some information about their costs in 2023 and what they're projecting for 2024. So we did sit down and take a look at that and had a bit of a discussion and gave it a reasonableness test. And for this year, at least, we've agreed to those increases, recognizing that there's work that's being undertaken through the government transfers policy. So we'll take a look at it again for next year.
Are we happy with the service? Is anybody interested in, I mean, it's contract renewal time, right? I imagine that contract was 5 years? Is that what it was? Is there
That-
any discussion?
it's
Has anybody
annual.
come forward and asked about it?
Used to come up yearly and
It is.
we
still.
voted on it individually each year. I believe that this is the first year that it's been operationalized. Is that the correct word? So it didn't
Oh.
come to council for approval.
I see, okay. If it's been operationalized, I'm good.
Yes.
But I would be interested in seeing what constituted such a large increase. That doesn't have to be today, but
There was a fair bit related to the cost with the increase to the minimum wage adjustments that occurred last year, bumped up salaries over there. So what's that? And a projected potential increase for this year. So what we did is because we are reviewing how we actually manage that program in line with our other municipal services that are provided with contract out. But as Lisa said, we did a fairly in-depth review of the proposal in terms of what the cost to provide the service was, and it made sense. There hasn't been significant or much of any increases over the past couple of years, and they're at a point where they just to provide that service with all the inflationary measures. It's hard to hold the line.
Thank you. Good question I had.
Operating.
Council project.
All right, so our special projects for 2024, there's a summary that's included. We have 21 special projects planned for 2024. 14 are a continuation of prior year's projects and 7 are actual new projects or projects that weren't started in 2023. Our expenses for 2024 are just over $1 million. And some statistics, we've got 59% of our expenses will be covered through grant funding, which totals about $638,000. 3.25% of our projects will be covered through general surplus, which is just under $350,000. 7.5% will be funded through fees and charges, which is just over $80,000. And 0.7% through taxation. So just one project for the amount of $7,000 will actually affect the tax levy. If there's no questions on that, I guess we'll go through each individual project. Okay. So the first project is the 2024 wildfire prevention Fire Smart program implementation. This is 100% grant funded. And we're looking at a project cost of just over $122,000. If we're successful in the grant funding through the Community Resiliency Investment Program, we'll use the funding to essentially help fund the Land and Natural Resources Coordinator position, who will have a higher focus on things like Fire Smart, the establishment of a Community Fire Smart and Resiliency Committee, as well as the completion of a new Community Wildfire Resiliency Plan. And of course, there'll be some coordination that'll occur between RDP and the fire department's position.
Question, go ahead.
What do you think the chances to recruit somebody into that position are?
So, so we have under the LNRC umbrella, we've tried on a couple of occasions to fill that position. However, I'm confident, coming from a technical background, forestry background, that if we do some recruiting in places like College of New Caledonia around this time of the year when people are looking to graduate from technical school, I am confident that you'll get that boots on the ground kind of person that you need in this position. Someone who's willing to go out and pound the pavement, talk to residents, hand out information, lay out boundary ribbon, go monitor community wildfire risk reduction projects, that type of thing. But that's my idea.
Lisa and I brainstormed, we're gonna target those 2-year technical schools like the College of New Caledonia and Prince George. We're gonna try to focus on the more rural, northern areas of the province and target, like a 2-year forestry tech diploma student, to try to engage that interest. And we're hoping with the variety that we've been able to put into that role as well, the variety of tasks, that maybe we will attract somebody in that forestry technical background or natural resources technical background.
Cool, follow-up question.
So do we have somewhere in here, dollars, set aside for recruitment activities? for
Yes,
such
under
positions?
general administration and common services, we always have a bucket of money. I think it's approximately $25,000 every year for recruitment.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any others? Please.
All right, the next special project is our accessibility planning and awareness project. This project is has expenses of 24,700. 500 is from grant funding and 24,200 will be from general surplus. This is really just around the continued implementation of the Accessible British Columbia Act requirements, as well as help funding our participation in Northeast accessibility.
Any questions? Good.
Next is the airport master plan. This is a project that's got approximately $80,000 in expenses. It's a project that we've discussed between regional development and planning and public works to undertake a study that would look at more holistically the airport and some of the assets and land out in that area. So this is fully funded through general surplus. There was a special project last year, I think, from Public Works that was $20,000 for the Public Works Airport Master Plan, as well as $60,000 of unspent money associated with the official community plan that we've pooled or added into general surplus, and we'll be pulling back out to fund this project.
So this project will dovetail into the official community plan, or is this more like a business plan?
It's more of a looking at what we have as far as like our leases, some of the land issues that we have out there that need to be resolved, as well as looking at some of the business aspects and looking at the airport as an economic asset.
So it's both, because the land part of it will feed into or land use will feed into the OCP, and the others will let us know opportunities, I guess.
And we
Okay.
do have the reason I raised the OCP is we did receive that 171,000 from the province to cover off our OCP update. So that left us with that $60,000 that we'll no longer need to use for the OCP. The next project is our Boreal Caribou Protection and Recovery Plan review. So this was a project that started in 2023. And it was essentially hiring the services of Stantec to complete a bit of an economic assessment with an addendum related to impacts from the Boreal Caribou Protection and Recovery Plan. And this is approximately $52,000 of work still to be done that will come from general surplus.
Go ahead.
So in the report, it says, or in this a recap, it says that the report is due early in the new year. So we're in March now. We've been waiting for a very long time. So I'm wondering if we have an update, on the anticipated date that we will actually receive this report.
So, not to throw our consultant under the bus, but I've been pretty diligent about following up monthly with them. The new date that we have for the final report is March 15th. Or the, sorry, final draft report is March 15th.
That's pretty soon. Good.
The next project is our business facade improvement program. I think we're in year 10 or 11 of the business facade improvement program. It's 100% grant funded through NDIT, and we've already actually received approval from NDIT for this project for 2024. Any questions?
Do we, well, I guess if we've been spending the money, so we obviously have people who are participating and asking, right? Because we're not contributing to this. We're essentially just as administrating the fees. So, okay.
Yeah, last year we had 3 successful projects. We actually had 5 that were on the books to be completed. 2 of the business owners were unable to complete, so we saw 3 projects successfully completed, and we handed out $10,100 for those 3 projects.
Good.
The next project is bylaw update. So this is actually an update to our building bylaw. It's been since 2015. This bylaw was adopted. So with the changes that have come in through the BC Energy step code, as well as the updated BC building code, we would like to use $32,500 from general surplus to engage a consultant to update our building bylaw, as well as develop a resource library, which would be used to provide information to the public around some of the updated code requirements and BC Energy step code requirements. The next project is our complete communities. So again, this is a $150,000 project. It's 100% grant funded. And this is really a bit of an expansion of the OCP. It's really looking at connectivity, not from the broadband point of view, but connections within our community. So how do people, where do they live? How do they access the services they need? It touches on transportation, and we have received grant approval for this as well. So the grant was approved through UBCM.
Yeah, sure.
Just one question on the complete communities. Will it include a communications strategy? With us not having a newspaper, that seems to be the issue, is that people don't know things are happening, so we get low participation rates. So we had talked about our other committees that I'm on is talking about a Facebook page with just community events, so that at least that was something. And then the seniors were talking about not having accessibility to computers, that sort of thing. So would it include a communication strategy in this?
This project was not intended to, although I think that's a great idea because it's access to information but I think, I don't want to speak over what you've got planned.
So there was a resolution passed in January to direct staff to research and report back to council on the viability of a community newspaper newsletter. So we've been engaging with a lot of the organizations in the community, doing a lot of research. We're trying to prep that report for the March 11th meeting, but we're losing some time this week that we could be. So I'm not promising, but we're getting close to having something pretty fulsome for council to deliberate on.
The next project is the downtown revitalization plan. So this is really a continuation from the 2023 project. If you recall, at the February 12th, 2024 committee of the whole meeting, staff provided a presentation, and at that time it was generally agreed that branding, scoping the gathering space, and a parking study would be the top 3 priorities. This smallish budget of $26,900 from general surplus would be used really just to keep the momentum going. So it just doesn't become another study that sits on the shelf. We can start work on some of the items that were addressed as priority within the plan. The next project is our economic marketing viewpoint project. So again, this is just a continuation or a wrap up from the work that was undertaken in 2023. Again, at the committee of the whole meeting on February 12th, council was had viewed the final draft of the viewpoint marketing videos. And right now we're just waiting for feedback from Fort Nelson First Nation. The budget, the $5,700 would be used for any final edits that would be required based on feedback from Fort Nelson First Nation. The next project is the Food Cycler Pilot Program. So again, February 12th was a busy council meeting. If you recall in Administration Report 0424, council was provided with information regarding the pilot project. The $15,000 that we are expecting to actual expenses will be covered through LGCAP funding. And we're expecting a recovery from sales of the units of $22,500. Any questions?
Sign me up.
Line you up. Oh, okay. Perfect. The next project is our Green Waste Diversion Fund. Again, this is just really exhausting the funds that we had in our budget, I believe, since probably 2021. It's just continuing to work with School District 81 to implement green waste diversion in one last school, which is Fort Nelson Secondary School. After these funds are exhausted, I would anticipate that the government transfers policy would be utilized, or grant and aid for the schools to be able to tap into for future projects.
Go ahead.
Is the landfill keeping track of what is being diverted out of School District 81? Thanks.
The next project is the Northeast BC Tours and Marketing Consortium. A little bit of a change this year is that we're actually putting in the total amount of the project, which includes contributions from the other communities as well. The Northern Rockies contribution is $7,000, and this is the only project being undertaken in RDP that has an effect on the tax levy. And that's about it for this one.
So are we managing that for them? Is that why the entire dollar amount is in there? We're sort of the administrators of this. Okay.
The next project is Next Generation 911 Preparedness. So this is $45,000 that is 100% grant funded. And on August 2nd, 2023, the Northern Rockies was notified by the Ministry of Citizen Services that we had received $45,000 essentially to prepare for Next Generation 911. As staff, we've been meeting on a regular basis to talk about how we would like to use those funds. And it looks like addressing some of the issues that we have around civic addressing would be the most prudent preparation we can do. The project does not need to be completed until August 7th, 2026. So work will just continue until the province comes up with addressing standards, and then we'll start that project probably late fall. The next project is the Northern Rockies Environmental Action Challenge, or the contest that was introduced to council in around February. And this is $14,500, which will be funded through LGCAP. And this is to promote waste diversion to the vermicompost.
Which has already kicked off, so. If you're not on Facebook, check it wherever you are, check it out.
Correct. And we did receive a council resolution actually to initiate that project. So.
Yeah.
The next one is the official community plan and zoning bylaw update. So the 2023 project was specific to the official community plan. However, since we've received the $171,000 in funding from the province, we have included both the OCP update as well as the zoning bylaw updates that will be required around housing. We've included that in one project, and all expenses will be covered through grant funding. The next project is our regional transportation strategy. This is a broad look at transportation within the community as well as between communities. There's $20,000 that will be coming from general surplus, as well as a $25,000 grant that we just received notice that we were successful on from NDIT. We've also, in addition to this, since these were developed, or these projects were developed, we've also applied to the federal government for a $50,000 grant to take on a more robust regional transportation study. Good. I see you deep thought down there.
Yeah, I was, just because I know NDIT has got a follow-up plan for these grants that they're giving, plans, essentially, business plans, is what they're hoping these will achieve. And so I was just thinking about the grant. When will you start this? You've got notice that the grant, do we have to wait till whole budget is approved before we start moving on this, or? Because I know the nations, after having chatted with them, are interested in participating, right?
Yeah,
So-
we just received the notice that we were successful. So we just are waiting for to sign off an agreement. So we haven't seen the agreement yet.
Okay.
We should be able to get started fairly shortly thereafter.
Okay. Thank you.
The next project is a rural recreation trail enhancement, and this is $20,000 from general surplus to update some of our trailhead signage. This was a project that was proposed in 2023, and just because of priorities and where it sat in the list of priorities, we did not start this project yet. The next project is a Shop Local program development and campaign. So this is 100% funded through NDIT, $10,000 grant. And this is just to develop our own Shop Local program now that the Love Northern BC program has been discontinued. The Tourism Advisory Committee Familiarization Tour is $5,000 from general surplus. The tour that was planned for 2023 did not occur. It was deemed as unnecessary by the Tourism Action Committee, just based on the membership, and most had participated in the tour the previous year. There's a note at the bottom of this page that we're requesting that this project is removed in subsequent budgets, and that expenses related to a familiarization tour are derived from council's government corporate meetings budget. There's currently $5,000 established in that budget for Tourism Action Committee. So it's almost a duplication of accounting for expenses. The next project is the tourism marketing strategy. This is a project, again, that was planned to begin in 2023. However, at the end of 2022, we did go out for an expression of interest in an RFP, and the costs were just too high when they came back. And based on other workload and other projects that came up, we did not undertake this project. So we're looking to initiate that project this year. And then finally, the tourism strategy implementation. So we do have a tourism strategy that has several recommendations in it. One of the things we'd like to do this year is use the $49,900 from general surplus to have a consultant who helped develop that strategy, come back and look at a better connection between our tourism action committee and the strategy itself and what role they may play in implementation, as well as undertake some of these other actions or projects that are identified in the pink sheet. And that's our 21 projects.
Wow. Very busy.
We just, well, the reason there's so much carry forward, we just don't do anything. Any questions for regional development and planning?
Yeah. Thank you very much.
I just have one question.
Very well.
Some of the other pink pages say that they're for a decision. None of these say that. So what does that mean? They're for decision, right?
I think when they reprinted tab 14, I made a note of it, so I noticed that there was nothing, because
Oh, but they are for
these-
decision.
These
They're
specific
not
projects.
already.
Yeah,
Just curious. Thank you.
no.
If we're good, Mayor, we can move on to
Yes.
recreation.
I'm just was lost in the tourism strategy. Go ahead. Yeah, because we had quite a discussion about that part. I think we're on to tab 15.
We are on to tab 15, correct?
All right, hello again, Mayor and Council.
Hello.
So I'm going to present the Recreation Services operating budget right now. So Recreation Services comprise the whole list you see up there, including the Recreation Center itself, the complex, aquatic building, regional parks, town parks, recreation programs, aquatic programs, buildings and facilities maintenance, which includes the moved over Toad River Community Hall. And then also new for this year is the golf course facilities and maintenance. So the Recreation Department provides the community with a wide variety of services all through there. I'm sure many of you have partaken. And it also extends throughout the community with all of our neighborhood parks and our regional parks, campgrounds, things like that. So the big recognition this year is the golf course facilities moved into this, as well as the Toad River Community Hall expenses. With the nature recreation programming, many of our staff are new and young workers, and we do have quite regular staff turnover, as many of these transition and will return to school, back to school, or on to future endeavors. So this leads to some continual training to ensure that our recreation staff maintain all the certifications and new skills required to deliver all the programs and services that the community desires. And as a recreation center, we continue to strive to be an inclusive space for all the members of the community and welcomes everyone with a wide variety of events, big and small, from the trade show down to an individual birthday party, through all of our various amenities. Jumping into the revenues, with this one, we do have an increase in fees and charges showing in the budget this year. The big portion of that is due to the recognition of the golf course, where we're expecting to see a revenue of $159,500. Also, additionally, we are anticipating to see an increase of about $9,500 in our fees as we gain additional usage of the facility. The other funding sources in the recreation budget haven't been adjusted, although we continue to pursue grant funding opportunities wherever we find that available. All right, on to expenses. So in addition to the noted increases due to the personnel, contract services, and equipment and maintenance supplies, again, the recognition of the golf course within the overall rec budget resulted in increase in various budget areas. So for the 2024 budget, amortization is also being recognized in the budget amount, resulting in $1.96 million. So it looks quite sizable. Good so far. So salaries, wages, and benefits. So as Aaron explained, we're seeing an overall increase in about 9% of our wages. This is due to legal obligations, negotiated and resolved contractual wages, and increase in cost of benefits and mandatory costs. Contracted services has been increased in the proposed budget by 39%. This number includes the addition of the golf course maintenance budget, which is $210,425, accounting for the majority of this increase. The remaining 9% of the increase is largely inflationary costs. This increases a few of our bigger hitters. One is insurance at about $22,000. Ice plant equipment maintenance for $10,000. As per the regulations, we included new for this year at general engineering services for $20,000, so that we can continue with our heating and mechanical, exploring efficiencies within that equipment. And then staff training and development for $13,700 for the continued development of certification for equipment, materials, and supplies. In this, we have an increase. We've increased in the proposed budget by 8%, largely due to inflationary costs. Programs supplies themselves have increased by $9,000. This is due in part to program demand, while maintenance, plumbing, and heating supplies increased by $27,265, largely due to the inflationary costs. And then new for 2024, there is the recognition of the propane costs to heat the Toad River Community Hall at $5,500. And then utilities costs is the last one here, where they have remained unchanged aside from the recognition of the hydro cost for the Toad River Community Hall at $2,000. Nice note here is that although the utility rates continue to rise, the projects undertaken within the recreation center have allowed us to improve some of our energy efficiencies and allowed this budgetary cost to remain the same. Yeah, because like I said, the rates aren't going down. But so that's a long version of that. Any questions
Not
on
that
that?
long. Questions? Questions, John?
What kind of efficiencies have we seen? Can we, share that information? Maybe we can save community members some money as well.
Yeah, you bet. So a big efficiency we've seen is upgrades to LED lighting. We just completed a project within the pool. Yeah, out of that, we replaced, I believe it was 89 fixtures with the new lights that you see in there. And with doing that, we've lowered the number of fixtures and also lowered the energy cost quite substantially. Another big energy savings cost, which you'll see in once we get to projects as well as a continuation of that project, is our DHRC, which everyone loves that acronym. It's a dedicated heat recovery chiller. And what it does is it takes waste heat from our ice plant that we generate just in the process of making artificial ice, takes that heat, carries it over into our pool, and we use it to heat the pool water and also the air in the natatorium. And with that, we've seen a pretty huge increase. I don't have the exact numbers offhand, but I believe the payback on the upgrades of that project that we did this year was actualized in gas savings in about 2 months, which is pretty huge for paybacks.
That's a great story.
Yeah. This past year, we've also replaced one of our boilers with a new condensing boiler that's much more energy efficient. So we've seen some gas savings there as well. Yeah. Operational efficiencies too, trying to make sure that when we're not using the facility, we turn the lights off. We'll send that message to everyone at home too, right? Go through your house, shut your lights off. It'll save some power. So we try and do all that kind of stuff as well. We do have some of our systems are automated, so we can schedule on and off times. So while the building is vacant, and we've transitioned recently or in the past few years, originally from having staff in the building 24 hours a day to having vacant time at night, where we can realize some savings by having lights turn off when there's no one in the facility. That sort of thing. Yeah.
That's good. Associated with that is reduction in our carbon footprint, right? Do we keep track of that so that we can report to the province? Yeah, okay.
You bet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At
least it gets all the fun
I
on
know
that
they
one.
expect us to, right?
Yeah.
Because these are all perfect examples of projects that help us do that. So,
Yeah, so all the gas savings that we see on that has a greenhouse gas reduction potential that
Yeah.
gets reported.
Perfect, thank you. Question?
And just for, well, just confirming that the interest line there, is that like, what is that? Is that because of the cost of borrowing for the rec center? What is that? I don't remember seeing that before, but maybe I've just not noticed in past years.
It has been there in the past years and it is related to our long-term debt.
Is that it for recreation?
That's it. No special projects.
That is it for recreation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
16 is blank. I thought maybe I messed up.
Okay. I'm just gonna ask you to jump back to tab 9.
What?
Sorry. Counselor Gerwing, here's your chance. Now you get to talk about sewer.
Yay.
Bear with me as I'm trying to go digital, but I'm old.
Get your back up.
I'm trying. So we'll start with sewer, and if you want to take a break in between, because I am through the rest of the operating, I think.
Yes, this will encompass 5 operating areas. We're gonna do sewer, water, public works, the cemetery, and solid waste.
An airport.
So you may want to call a break at some point. Giving you a heads up.
Okay.
We'll start out with, yeah, I'm just trying to follow your slide. I'm like, no.
I started with sewer.
So, for sewer operationally, we're pretty status quo both with revenue and your operating. I see Trevor has his beautiful amortization number in there. So the real number is substantially less on the expense side from what we're used to seeing in the past. And well, Trevor's not even here to see me throw him under the bus. So for outflow, there's nothing really, or sorry, for sewer, there's nothing really changing. It's a status quo on the operational side of things. I will note that the outflow, this is operational as opposed to budget, but as far as the outflow goes, which is the amount of wastewater that we put into the natural environment, we did not exceed last year for the first time. That's not necessarily a good thing. We exceed when it rains.
So would that have to do with the lack of rainwater we got?
So then that'll tie into another discussion that we'll have in future components of the budget discussions. For water.
Water is on tab 11.
They're pretty status quo, so I'm just gonna go. Please, if you have any questions, do not hesitate. There's a little bit more going on the water side of things. Again, the revenue status quo, it's user fees and property taxes. So I'm not addressing the salaries because there's no new persons in the department as far as water goes. It's just straight negotiated hikes.
Luann?
Yep.
With revenues, does that include the bulk water station?
Yes. Contracted services were up 10,000. That's primarily for training, memberships, and insurance. So just little uppages here and there. We are significantly up on materials and supplies, which you saw on Trevor's, one of his originating slides earlier. There was an $83,000 increase. That relates back to a failed VFD that we purchased or ordered in late July, early August of last year, and we were invoiced this year. So it's actually a reserve contribution. It was just an expensive repair on a failed component at our booster station. Any questions with respect to those details?
I don't really have a question on the budget side, but on operations, like with the wildfires and the drought situation, when does our reservoir reach, say, a critical stage of where that would cause people to not be able to use water?
So we do have a bylaw in place and we monitor our levels and stuff. I couldn't give you a set level today. But we monitor that, and so there's treated water reservoirs, and we watch those levels. And in the past, we've actually put restrictions in place because that one reservoir went low, but that was a malfunction. Scott, you might recall that one at the golf course. So there's monitors and measures in place to make sure that we're not depleting. It's the overall demand that we're actually paying attention to more so that we can judge that better. We're going to see more discussions about that in some of the projects when we get to the water quality project, as well as that pre-treatment feasibility study. Those two projects will tie into that because we do have the ability to draw direct from the river. It's just not recommended. And we'll get into a little bit more details on that. Does that answer your question? A little bit roundabout there for you?
That water?
Yeah.
All right, let's take a 10-minute reset, please. Okay, thank you, everybody. We'll resume after that little refreshment break. And I think we finished with water, special projects, I guess, is water.
There's one water special project, and that's the water quality improvements. So work's ongoing on this one. We tendered out the installation of the raw water pond intake. So we're raising the intake so that we're getting cleaner water as opposed to the dirty sediment concentrate at the bottom of the intake or of the raw water ponds. And we also started to create a baseline data for scientific analysis of raw water characteristics, but throughout the treatment system. So that's anticipated to be completed in and around August. We'll have a final report. It's a year's baseline, and it'll help us to understand at what point organics are a problem, at what point manganese is an issue, and how we can better treat that in colder temperatures and warmer temperatures, what's coming in. Just help us to better understand what the chemical balance in the system works best for us. I think we're on the public works now.
So if there are no questions, we're just moving to tab 17.
Good job, Erin.
She was expecting the tab skip. Love it. And with Trevor in the room, there's the Trevor's stupid amortization number.
Taking a lot of heat for it, but just smile and it's the right thing to do. Yeah.
Essentially, the bottom line number in pen is 3.8 million, less the amortization to truly represent what I'm familiar with respect to expenses. For public works, we have a little bit going on. So we added approximately 182,000 to contract services under public works. Part of that is community trail, just adding the ability for contractors to go in and help and take some hazards away where our resources might be challenged. Training, there's significant increase on training, partially because of my departure. It's just pre-planning to see to fill in some gaps that might exist on my training. And then additionally, we've asked for, which I think is going to be organizational, Erin, some additional training with respect to root cause analysis and safety supervisor.
Yeah, that's organizational wide. Yeah.
So for for urban roads, under urban road repairs, we upped that budget a little bit to provide for additional crack sealing this year. $25,000, I believe, is the increase on that. For mobile equipment, we upped our contract services by $15,000. Sheer inflation and some increased repairs. There was 3 events of over $10,000 repairs this year. That's not a large budget, so. Insurance is up. We have provided for Toad River. Instead of the grants to groups, we have approximately 12,000 in public works now that are provided for in Toad River, with 4,000 of that being contract services and the remaining being in materials and supplies. The big hitters for contract services would be dust control. We simply moved material and supply costs from dust control and transferred it over to contract services, and because it's contract service. So the expense is the same, it's just a transfer. And then it's just materials and supplies and contract services. Yeah. And then an additional $50,000 was added to the rural roads contracts because we were very close to hitting the cap on that contract this year, which is where you want to be, but we're just gonna add a little buffer in there. And yeah, with the dust control, I think we've talked to equipment and materials primarily with the dust control transfer to contract services. As well, our flowers came in a little cheaper this year, so we were able to reduce that budget by 5,000. And that's generally it. Any questions on Public Works? In the special projects, so last year we did a community trail assessment on danger trees around it, and we've identified well over 130 trees that need to come down. So we just asked for a special budget to address that, and we'll be doing those types of assessments on a regular basis every 2 years. The second special project is the demolition of the house on 52nd Avenue West. So that's just the cost to remove the house that was acquired in. And then the Gotta Go program. So this previously has never been in the budget like this. This includes everything with respect to the Gotta Go program. Gotta Go was never in the budgets before, so, but it should have been. But I don't understand. Trevor can talk better than I could.
It wasn't a budget, it just wasn't reflected the way it's issued.
Oh, okay. So it's just changed around.
Because part of our budget process with agreement we have with the other neighboring, with PRD and the partners in the group, is that our contribution to the washroom partnership for the highways is part of our contribution to Gotta Go, and we weren't having that as part of it. It wasn't reflected in our budget that way, so we want to make sure from a transparency perspective it's reflected as our agreement. That's the reason why you see it this way. Everything was budgeted previously, and then of course we hold funds. What's the proper word?
Interest,
Is that correct?
Yeah. It's the grant project I was thinking of, not. So this is just one way of encompassing everything, and the grant project itself will be gone. So this will reflect in the future, you'll see straight operational costs and then your funding contributions. That's it for Public Works. Any questions? Music. Solid waste. All of the contracts for solid waste are due for tender this year. So we've built in the risk. That's the short of the 213,000 increase on solid waste. We just don't know what that number is, so we built it all. Either way, if it's, we'll be coming back to council for the landfill when at least, anything over 200,000, we come back to award regardless. Any questions on that one? The contracts are the 6-yard bin contract up and down the highway, the landfill operations, and the residential.
I wanna go back to Public Works.
Okay.
Where did the gravel stockpile go? Was that part of a?
It's a project.
Later?
That'll be one of the
That-
pinks.
Okay, I haven't seen it, so, okay,
That'll be under renewal.
okay, thanks.
Do you have any diversion numbers?
Not today.
Just in regards to that, any of the activities from last year will be rolling into the annual report. So that's where you'll see like the activities and good news stories and information that way.
And there's one special project for solid waste, and that's the installation of 5 groundwater monitoring wells. So we've got, I believe it's 27 located between the old landfill and the new landfill. Combined, I mean, not between. We've identified the need to install 5 additional more, 3 for where the fire department has done their training for several decades. So we need to see what kind of contamination might be in that area. And 2 at the old landfill, because there's indications that we're outside the boundaries. Any questions on that?
And there's no grant funding available to offset this project somewhere, environmental something or other?
If there is, we'll find it and apply for it.
Okay,
I doubt it. Just because it's operational.
It's a requirement to maintain our permit, meet the environmental requirements, right? So it's.
And we identified the need for the wells ourselves? Or somebody pointed it out to us?
It was part of our testing and our with
Groundwater
our-
monitoring
yeah.
plan, and then there was an inspection that occurred at the fire site, which identified a hazard, a visible hazardous, or sorry, it was hydrocarbons, environmental spill, very small. But it highlighted the need to monitor that area, and it becomes regulatory.
Wow. Okay.
So cemetery, again, there's nothing earth shattering on this one. Pretty status quo. I don't mind Trevor's amortization number on this one.
I don't. So the cemetery has no assets is why it's so low. Like, what is that amortization on?
Fence and gate?
Gate, shed.
That caught me off guard. I don't know the specific assets that are attracting amortization for the cemetery, but I can certainly get that for you.
We put a new building in there, a small one. 7 years ago, 8 years ago, maybe that might be a part of that. Sure. We'll get a little bit of
The shed and the
amortization.
fence.
Yep.
And then last but not least, the airport. So this one's not as status quo as the rest, as we did make some changes on the revenue side. COVID really was a challenge for the airport to try and estimate some of these revenues. So we waived landing fees back in those days, and last year we put those anticipated revenues back up to where we thought they might be, but we didn't touch it. So we've reduced those and brought it back to more to a realistic of what we're actually seeing. And also pay parking still in there. So we've removed that. So contracted services is up. The significant contract service change with the airport has to do with Executive Aviation's one of our contractors. They provide de-icing and snow removal on our behalf, and outside of NRM's control, they also do baggage for CMA. So there was a recontract there, and that accounts for 93,000 of that. And the balance of the contract services would be primarily training and some software increases. Any questions on that one for operating? And then the obstacle limitation service clearing. So this year we upped that budget a little bit simply because we have to have somebody come in this year. Every 5 years, we have to do a cycle where we survey the trees to make sure that they're not breaking through the limitation surface. And we just simply don't know how many times that guy has to come up and do that. Any questions?
I'm just wondering why that's a project and not operationalized. I mean, that's something you gotta do. All trees always grow every year.
So
So why is it a project instead of something that's just operational?
Well, actually, it is part of the operations budget. We have separated because we're doing, because just so you can do a comparison from year to year with the operations, as we don't actually do that every year. The intent is to get rid of the trees. And then part of the operations is to actually mow it or keep the trees from growing so that we're not doing this extensive removal of trees. But one of the challenges also in Cricketer Ponds was when they did the change to the regulation, right, with the TP. Because there was some
TP
change,
312, yeah, 5th edition.
yeah, which was some changes to
They changed some of the limitations.
limitations requirements as part of the OLS system.
So there's another candidate potentially for ongoing reserve kind of a thing. Set money aside every year.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like I said, though, the intent with this one here would be that it would be operationalized annually. It's just over time, the trees have grown up in an area which we didn't necessarily keep clearance and have to, and now we have to. So it would be something that we would look at. But the reality is that, like the other areas that we've done, because we've done some previous areas, would be to maintain it on an annualized basis so that the trees just don't grow up.
Yeah,
That's all. Yeah. We're actually talking about probably paying the area if we can.
absolutely.
Turn it into a farm. The cows will keep the trees down.
Right? As long as they're not too tall.
Miniature cows.
So, and then that one actually, you've seen that 40,000 request multiple times, simply because we've been getting in-kind works from BC Wildfire. They've been coming in and doing training. They've been doing some burning for us. So that's kind of swapped out some of our abilities and time and resources. And then we asked for that $40,000 again. And you'll see this year, if you look out when you drive out Airport Drive to the connector, you're going to see a beautiful cleared area there that's just about right for cow feed. Anyway.
If we're ready, Mayor, we can move on into capital.
I don't see any hands up for questions, so let's keep her moving.
I can't believe how fast this is going. Oh, I just jinxed everybody.
So I will just do a quick introduction to the capital section. This year is a little bit different where we've separated out the asset renewal from the new assets and asset upgrades with those three different types making up our capital program. I think we've got a good explanation of the differences between the three, but it might be worthwhile just spend a minute describing them. Asset renewal projects are projects that will extend the life of an existing asset. Whereas asset upgrades improve or enhance the service level that assets are providing. And then new assets are, of course, a new service level, but a completely new asset to the NRM. One of the reasons we've gone this route where we separate the three is it aligns well with how we report to the provinces, and all the local governments report to the province in this manner. So it just helps us with that perspective, but it gives us clarity as well with regards to what we're trying to achieve, especially around that asset renewal program. And so with the asset renewal program, thanks, Sarah. In general, what we're looking for from council is a decision on three pieces of information. We're looking for a decision on the contribution to the renewal program. So that's the amount that we will contribute to the reserve funds to fund renewal projects. Then we're looking for a decision on the total expenditures for the renewal work plan. This year, that's just over 21 million. And then the third piece is the actual withdrawal. So even though we're planning to undertake around $21 million in asset renewal projects, only 19.8 million is going to be funded from the reserve funds. And that's because we've got grant funding or other sources of funding for those projects. So yeah, so I'll go over the tab 25, the asset renewal program budget, in a little bit more detail, but essentially we've tried to make it clear what numbers we're focused on here. We've highlighted those, the annual contribution, the work plan, and then the withdrawals. But we've presented two tables to sort of round out the picture of how things come together, because it's not always just one for one. We have some projects where we've taken or budgeted to take from the reserve funds to fund them that aren't asset renewal projects. And that can happen as we develop the scope of a project from year to year. Things can change, and also just the interpretation of what we're trying to achieve can change. So we do see in this 2024 budget, there's a couple of projects within the asset upgrade and the new asset categories that we have some funding coming from the reserve funds. And that's why we're presenting sort of the overall picture of the capital program broken out by what's actually touching the reserve funds and the renewal program as a whole. These exceptions can occur for various reasons and likely will occur. So it's not something we can just separate out from our overall activity. With that said, the beginning balance of the reserve funds, and so these are just estimated right now because our year end isn't complete, but approximately 43.8 million in reserve funds at the start of the year. We are recommending a contribution to the asset renewal program of 8.7 million, which is the same contribution amount that's been requested in the past years. There's been slight deviations to it. A couple of years ago, there was a deviation to it, but last year was 8.7. This is where you'll see a good portion of that interest income being attributed to the reserve funds. And then the withdrawals in total of 20.2 million, of which the 19.8 are related to the asset renewal program directly. If there's no questions on that. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so I might be misunderstanding this, but so I'll just put it out there. So according to this document, you're suggesting that we contribute $8.7 million. And then additionally, there will be $2.5 million from the interest on the current reserves going into various reserve funds in 2024 for a total contribution of whatever those two things add up to. Or, this is where I was percolating, are you telling me that we're suggesting 8.7 contribution minus the 2.5? Neither of the above.
Well,
First one?
yeah, the first one is essentially the answer. Now, my numbers are not perfectly clear in the sense that that interest income column, that 1.35 million that you see there, I've been describing that at a higher level of around 2 to 2.2 that is going to go into the various components of our accumulated surplus. So of that 2.2 increase in investment income, I'm estimating very roughly that about 1.35 is going into the reserve funds. The balance is to different areas of our accumulated surplus, like the cemetery trust, where we've got a portion of that, not within, that's a bad example, I apologize. But that's an example of where that interest is also going. Another area is within our accumulated surplus, we've segregated out areas with regards to water and sewer that are attracting interest as well. So that's why the number doesn't add up to the 2.2 and 2 that I've been sharing.
Follow up, Mayor? So then last year, we contributed 8.7 million plus a portion of the investment income went into reserves last year too, or is this a new way of looking at it?
No, last year when we had I think it was around 2 million in actual interest income. So I'm in the process of determining how much is going to be attributed to the reserve funds, but it's essentially that same idea. What we earned in 2023, a portion of it based on the balances in the reserve funds will get credited.
Okay, thank you.
Think we're good?
Good. Yeah. I'll just add to that. What we do know, and this reason why we're undertaking that process this year with the sustainable service levels is a contribution to the reserve fund based on what the initial look is that it's underfunded. It's not enough of a contribution. So that'll be a piece of the process moving forward. And then this program here, I'd mentioned at the last council meeting, for example, is the projects associated with the withdrawals out of these funds are linked basically to council policy with the asset management policy, which hits a specific service level to maintain the infrastructure. That's why we'll be going to the projects, but we'll actually be asking council when we go through the actual deliberation process to approve the contribution and withdrawal component from the funds, because the projects themselves, for lack of better words, aren't necessarily negotiable because they're part of the renewal of components to maintain the service level. Yeah, that's so there'll be lots of discussion about this moving forward. The other piece of this is a significant portion of the contribution is linked to our IDCA agreement. So the funding component, with the exception of vehicles and equipment reserve, which we can't tie to our IDCA agreement, everything else that we contribute is a component of our IDCA agreement. So it's part of our contribution.
to agreement. Does that make sense? We'll walk through the projects one by one.
We have, I think there is one general government project in, the capital section. Jay, did you want to take it to annual tech renewal and town square?
So you'll notice, in tab 26 there, two, asset renewal projects. So one's our annual, contribution to the tech and communication renewal budget, which is, I think it's a subsection of the buildings and facilities, area, but essentially, our tech services department maintains an inventory of equipment ranging from computers to radios, our photocopy print centers, drones, etc. And based on the condition or the anticipated lifespan of those devices, calculates a renewal value. So they did some work this last year replacing a series of switches, and they draw from that reserve fund as needed. So they typically try to run to end of life. But there are some things where you see the performance starting to suffer, and that's when they'll replace things based on the organizational need. So, any questions on that one? And then the second is the town square renewal budget. So as council's aware, we this was a project that began in 2021. When we got to a point with cost estimates for the project, we realized that they were far beyond what we had anticipated or what the condition assessment originally estimated. And it begged a greater analysis of, I guess, what the building's needs were. So in the meantime, there's been some failures, I'll call them, that have been addressed maintenance-wise to keep systems working. Johnny spoke to some of those with the HVAC system last year, and we've had some major plumbing work undertaken, but we continue to stay the course to get that look at what the building needs overall. We've taken some of the electrical assessment work in-house and have, I think, proven out some assumptions that were made from the original condition assessment, which is great, but I think slowly by surely it's giving us a better idea of what's truly needed for the facility overall. So the contribution for the $400,000 budget is to gain the expertise of an architect to lead us through kind of that, the options, to really analyze the options that council can consider in the way of what's required. So the scope of improvements may not be what we originally understood them to be based on the condition assessment, given what we know now.
Comment? Councilor Goodwin, please.
So have we informed Grace Manor as to some of the possible changes? Because I know that between what Grace Manor is hoping to do and BC Housing, they're waiting for the town to make some decisions. And so if those decisions are going to be further delayed, especially around the outdoor envelope, if that's the right word, have we communicated with them so that they can move forward, maybe without us?
Yeah, so Grace Manor had contacted and asked if or when we're going to, which we provided in that response that we didn't know what that looked like. So we really don't, because currently what we're doing, so the answer is yes. And then of course we've been in direct communication because it's with BC Housing that we contact and communicate with specifically around, because that's who would in many cases fund the project. So they're aware that there's a delay on our end with regards to this particular building, because what we're determining right now is fundamentally is what do we do with the building. That's where the architect's in here now as Jay said, good news story is we were able to determine that the electrical, we don't have to rip every wall apart in the building. So the non-destructive testing and whatnot that was done in electrical determined that we don't have to replace every ounce of electrical. We have to do some panels and stuff, but we don't have to penetrate every wall, which is significant savings. So what the architect's essentially doing is what would the cost be to stay in the building and upgrade the building to appropriate code and for a certain level of code, I guess, in the end of the day, provide some additional accessibility and what's required to be put in the building to maintain it. For 20, 30, 40 years, whatever it might be. Or as part of that assessment is what options are to move out of the facility and look for something different. Because when you look at a $26 million price tag, if we were to do any significant upgrades, we can pick up a building in town for 4 or 5 and do some significant changes to that. The challenge is what I do with this building because you're not going to sell it, can't give it away, right? I mean, if we can't operate in the building, no one else is going to essentially operate the building because anyone that would come in here would need to change the footprint to meet their needs, which you hit code, which it's probably cheaper to implode it than not. The challenge we have is it's connected to other buildings. So there's a lot of moving parts. So we've essentially advised Grace that we don't have a good timeline on that besides what we're working through right now with our with the architects to go through that analysis.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Then we'll move on to, we'll skip over tab 27, move to tab 28, and then move on to sewer and water.
First project under sewer is on 44th this year, all pretty up to date on.
Or a short comment.
So I do apologize. I was away on Monday when that council meeting took place. He knew. So we have a pretty stellar communication plan in place specific to 44th, Cottonwood, and 51st, and other things as well. And we'll start off with a Zoom to let just a Zoom meeting or an open public meeting to let the residents come in and ask questions and meet everybody. Also, I believe the question was about contingency on that one. Typically, these contracts are MMCD. It's pretty standard that we apply a 10% contingency on those projects. If it's 10%, I really won't. I typically leave the contingency out and just say in contingency. I can easily put 10% back in, but if it's occasionally we do change it to 15 or 20 for whatever reasons, that's usually when you'll see it. Otherwise, it's been 10%.
Can I just have confirmation? Because I know on 44th, there is somebody that is has
100%,
mobility
yeah.
challenges, and so we're dealing with that.
100%.
Thank you. Okay.
So 51st Avenue East, $1.4 million is identified to replace the sewer on 51st Avenue East as well. There's going to be substantial road base works and asphalt works.
Wow. You're gonna try to tackle both of those this year? I said she's gonna try to tackle both of those projects this year.
Yep. They both need to be done. I'm not agree. That's a good point. It'll be coordinated. So 44th is going to be done in phases. So it'll be coordinated. So there shouldn't be anybody stepping on each other's toes there. Was that the concern? That
Well,
was
no,
the-
it's not about the contract, it's about capacity, internal capacity to manage them.
So, yeah, I'm not gonna be here, so. So this would be, we contract, our consultants are urban engineering on both 44th and 51st. We'll be doing contract administration and site. For us, it's just checking in and progressing. So hopefully burdenless for us. Did you just jinx us? The next renewal request is the lift station. This is funding that will complete a project that started last year. Essentially, it's just we're waiting for the return of a lift station pump after it's rebuilt, which is, it might even actually be in, I'm not sure. It's still pending. Sanitary CCTV program. This is the video of our sanitary mains, which help us to prioritize sanitary spot repairs and or renewal activities and relining activities. Next year, you'll probably see a relining opportunity will be coming up within the next year or two, which is non-destructive ability to reinforce your sewer mains. Fancy balloons. Okay. Sorry, I lost my place here. Bear with me for a sec. Yeah, no, it just closed on me for some reason, so I have to go back to it. Sanitary sewer collection renewal program. So this is just a planned spot repair on 55th Street and some carryover work. There's a fair repair going on 55th around Art Fraser Park there. There's a gas line there. That one's gonna challenge me. And then this for the sewer outfall, this one is really the MWR application, so the municipal wastewater regulation application. So we've gone through the processes and a very detailed, thorough preliminary assessment by the ministry. So we are at that final stage where we will be under the municipal wastewater regulation as opposed to the current permit under the Environmental Management Act. And so these funds are just to ensure any ministry concerns such as river morphology or anything like that can be addressed. That's it for sewer. Any questions? On to water, so tab 29. Scoop you. The water treatment plant renewal, a pump has been ordered and it's on its way. This is carryover project from 2023. The raw water pretreatment options feasibility study. So this work's underway. We managed to get a UBCM planning grant for this one. So $10,000 contribution toward it. And it's just looking at alternatives and best options for the NRM when it's pulling in raw water. Do we need a silt removal? Something that pre-treats it before it gets to the pond. The river intake pump station. So we started an assessment last year. We will be reviewing the results of what we know from that assessment this year. This project provides for additional inspections at the river intake pump station because they weren't able to complete a full pipe assessment just due to blockages and the way it's designed. So we have to get some specialized flushing up here to open those lines and just take a good look at those pipes. And then in addition, we also know that there's some significant costly butterfly valves for the intake pump station that are malfunctioned. So we're working on replacing those. The work on this project will also provide for preliminary design and future what that river booster station will look like moving. There's a lot going on there. The river well to the booster station line replacement. This is the 7th time we're replacing the last of our ductile iron It's just a small pipe, but is on the intake section. These are critical lines for us. This is our intake, so. This year we'll be doing a preliminary design, anticipated replacement of that line next year.
So I'm just wondering why this project, the Riverwell to Booster Station line replacement and the SCADA renewal and the Fort Nelson Golf Club irrigation system, they are not IDCA eligible. Can you help me to understand why?
They should be. I don't know that it matters if we've already made contributions, but I'll let
Well,
Trevor.
the more we contribute, the better off we are
Oh.
for future years. But yes, yeah, I, good catch. I just saw that there too, so.
It might just be where it's clicked on the, because when they put
Oh.
the one for the rain. You're in the wind. You're definitely in the win column.
Yeah, when they go in, when the staff go into the Questica to enter their information, there's just a tick that you to say it's so when it prints, it comes up and says it's IDCA eligible, but it's all renewal projects, so it would definitely be IDCA.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't trying to point out any mistakes or anything. I was just trying to understand why it wouldn't be
Mhm.
eligible, so.
Yeah, my apologies.
Yeah.
It totally is. The only thing that's not is really equipment,
Thank you.
mobile equipment. So SCADA renewal, this is just, to repair, some hardware at 27 locations. Just in line with our automation program. It's time, it's renewal. It's 12 years old. And that's it for water.
Did you want to jump to tab 32?
Scooped me.
Scooped you.
Tab 32 under Public Works Asset Renewal. So this is, it says Airport More, so Public Works owns it. So that's why it's under Public Works. But the Airport More, it's time. They're running a 22-year-old mower out there and they've got a lot of lamps. 50,000 is identified for that. That's all for what? Absolutely. Asphalt path renewal. So this is a new one. Hopefully you'll see this repeated throughout the years, maybe not every year, but we've recognized that the community trail and the golf course path, and there's actually some asphalt trails throughout the urban town where you typically see concrete paths. This is to address that because it's a different way of managing than your typical asphalt roads. It's different equipment. And so we've identified for 2024, $230,000 for this one. So this is community trail and golf course path renewal. Any questions on that one? Boulevard tree lights. So the lights have arrived, not in time for us to install them. It was too cold by the time they got here. So these funds are carryover from last year for installation. Concrete sidewalk renewal. This includes several locations throughout town to replace some concrete panels and in areas where the risk is higher. Cottonwood Road. Cottonwood Road renewal. Sorry, I was confusing this one with 51st. So $2 million and $100,000. This is drainage and road renewal, and it'll tie in nicely with the Poplar and Aspen area that we've recently done. This was supposed to be done last year, and it's flagged to be completed in 2024. The contractor, it was too late in the year for the contractor to start a project of this size by the time he was able to do it, or they were able to do it. Fire department.
Contract left already? That's let, the RFP is.
Yeah, it's already awarded that
Okay.
one. Fire department truck one, so this is for, James's department, should there be new personnel in that. Oh, sorry, this is carryover from his truck last year. There's another request in here, for additional personnel. Fire hall, public works building foundation replacement, so 915 remains under the grant for this one and 185 to determine capacity. At this point, we're still weighing out options associated with the capacity challenges experienced by both fire department and by public works. We want to make sure that the grant funds that we're going to be expending are expended in a manner that meets the end use of that building. Greens mower. This one was previously asked for and it was awarded. It's 2 years on the wait list. And we've identified an additional $5,000 in order to get that mower here. The wait list on some of the equipment is really long. Long-term gravel supplies. We've identified 2.5 million for an RFP to acquire the gravel. Mayor Fraser, did you have a question on that one? or-
No, I was just wondering, I haven't got this far.
Oh.
Tell you the truth, I hadn't got this far, so that's why I was kind of expecting to see it back there and didn't. That's why I asked the question.
Oh, okay.
We're in new territory for me. I didn't think we'd get this far. Shame on me. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
You're citing in here to provide predictable costs. Have we had a variable in costs in gravel in the past?
So in the past 3 years, the amount of gravel is anywhere from 30% increase to 60% increase.
From like,
Like within the last 3 years, and
The
in
amount
one
or the-
case from 1 year to the next.
The cost per meter or the total amount increase?
I can get back to you on what those specifics are. I would look at it at contract would be
Okay.
my vision of it.
Okay.
Based on just a gravel number.
yeah, just the gravel number. for
Yeah.
sure. And then, have we found a suitable place yet? You know, we were looking at a possible, but you have one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Old land.
Thank you.
Nonda Bridge, so work is scheduled to continue on Nonda Bridge with stabilizing the 2 piers on that. So that should happen this year. Currently working through finalizing environmental permits. Identified $200,000 for additional pickups for Public Works fleet. The existing units are aged, inappropriate, and or in disrepair. So the roads renewal asphalt project this year, the $500,000 is identified. It's primarily for patching. You'll see asphalt's now included with individual projects such as 44th and 51st and Cottonwood. So you're not going to see that big asphalt renewal program anymore, as we're putting it in with multi-asset projects, which is wonderful. Roads renewal gravel, so $550,000 identified for this year. With McConaughey looping a big part of that, and vegetation control, culvert, and ditch maintenance would be a big part of it this year.
And this is different gravel than the stuff we're looking to source? For the 2.5 million worth? That's different types of gravel. I was just curious why they'd be separate.
They don't have to be separate. There's more going on for Grant Pier.
Okay. Yeah, I
but-
just think it would be worth it looking for 300 or 3 million versus 2.5. Okay, I get it.
Rough mower. So we have $110,000 identified for the rough mower for the golf course. Currently they have a 2005 John Deere terrain cut. It's aged and unreliable, and they need to replace that one. That's a critical unit for us golfers. Surface drainage and storm structural improvements. So we've identified $375,000. One of the big issues that we're going to be addressing this year is the drainage issue, primarily on 48th and in and around Public Works where Fire Hall is. So there's a damaged culvert at the Fire Hall parking lot, which is why you see it's not paved. So we're going to be doing some ditching work and we're going to repair that culvert, but there's a big drainage issue there on 48th that we need to take a look at. In addition, we worked with Modi to develop a share agreement to replace the drainage at the intersection on Airport Drive, Alaska Highway. So that work will be, it was actually supposed to be completed last year, but again, it was too late in the year by the time the paperwork was signed. And that's it for Public Works. Any questions on that? I'll move on to solid waste.
Yes, please.
Pace okay, faster?
I think we're good.
Okay.
New territory for me, so I'm still catching up each time you go.
That we're going so fast? So $200,000 for the cell renewal at the landfill. So this year we plan on doing some clearing. So we'll do a little advanced clearing as well. So we'll clear cell 6 and cell 7, and look to develop cell 6 next year. It just gives us that next. We're ready to start using another cell once the current one is at capacity. Landfill road stabilization. So this one didn't get fully completed last year. A lot of the renewable materials we wanted to use on this road were going to be sourced from cotton. So we didn't get as much done on stabilizing those roads as we cared to, but it'll take place this year. And that's it for solid waste for renewal. I'll just continue on to airports. So runway condition reporting equipment, that's an ACAP. It's just Airport Capital Assistance Program has a schedule for renewed equipment. This equipment is old in age and due for renewal, so we'll be making an application for 100% funding so that we can monitor our runways. Airport airside lighting systems. We did an assessment last year on our lighting systems on airside. So this is all of them. This $100,000 is identified to provide a preliminary design and ACAP application, and hopefully approval occurs in 2025 in order to replace those navigation lights. Again, this would be ACAP refundable. Okay, that's it. What I missed?
Yeah.
It's condition assessment and planning. I don't need to see it. It's just not on my list. So we got the condition reports in for the airport terminal, the airport storage garage, and the airport garage, including energy efficiency. So the next steps are to repair anything immediate and plan and progress toward what we want to do with those buildings. So you'll be getting a report on those, and those funds are to progress that.
We're just going to quickly jump back to tab 31. John?
Hello again. So for asset renewals, in recreation, we have two projects. The first one is the Fort Nelson Golf Country Club irrigation system assessment. This one's for a total of $20,000. And this was one that was driven out of last year's budget season. There was a need for some repairs. Recognized that the system was quite old. So the club itself did some spot repairs on the system, made it work for the last season. And we coordinated with an irrigation specialist to come up and do an assessment of that full irrigation system, make recommendations, come up with a maintenance plan for it, and critical spare parts that we need to have to ensure that it can continue, and projected PM and lifespan of the system. And then the next one we have is park accessibility improvements for $150,000. This one is from reserves, which was a project that started last year. And originally came from a while ago. With that, we have last season we completed the design portion of Andy Bailey Park and Campground. We're moving forward with that one. And then this is to continue on with the development of design for Art Fraser Park for upgrades for accessibility improvements. And also as part of this one, after the Andy Bailey portion was completed, it was determined that there was a need for an archaeological assessment. So that assessment has been started, or the permitting part for that assessment has been started. And that's also going to come out of this project. Questions on either of those?
Nope.
Perfect. This is just one more. Oh,
You might as well stay.
okay.
We'll give Luann a break. Let's go to 30. There we go. 42.
All right. All right, so the first one we have on the list for that, all caught up, is the Andy Bailey Regional Park and Campground improvements. This one is after the design piece. This is the implementation for all the accessibility upgrades as determined within a grant. This is completely grant funded. Out of that design, there was some additional components that would be nice to do's and that sort of thing. And we'll pursue grants for being able to implement those. But this is the grant portion that will be completed within the grant that we received.
John, I'll just jump in here. So one option that council may have for the Andy Bailey and Regional Park Campground Improvement Project is to source additional funding from the Growing Communities Fund to fund those extra improvements that were not able to be covered from the grant fund. And that's just indicated on the bottom of your project file. So that is an option that can be brought forward further for council's consideration.
See the highlighter? No, it's going. Sure. The next one I have is the Arena 2 heating design. This is one that came out of council meeting on December 11th, 2023. Look to explore our potential for including a heating system and insulation in the Arena 2 space to make that a little bit more hospitable for patrons who are viewing the hockey rink. So with that, we've got 20,000 in this one to work with the consultant to determine what would be the next steps for making that space with the insulation and heating. Right. And then on to Arena 2 seating, which is a project that we have budget for of $165,000. We've already worked with the design firm on this one, come up with a design for the secondary bleachers, and we brought that forward to you guys as well. With that, the hope is to continue with that. We have a grant in with NDIT. They responded back already, and we're just looking for a little bit more information. So hopefully we can have an answer on that real soon. That one was up to $100,000 for 70% of the project. So that will cover 100,000 of the 165. And that project would be the installation of permanent seating in the Arena 2 bleacher space, all with in the corner where you could view the score clock and the full surface of the game. It'll be raised up a little bit. Has accessible seating or accessible viewing area as well, ramps, railings, all the appropriate stuff, and then some additional modifications to the tube heaters that we have in place now, just to make sure that we can service the whole new feature.
Can we have a drawing of what this is gonna look like available at the open house? Hopefully people will attend the open house, and there has been some interest in seeing what this design looks like. So.
Yeah, for sure.
And I mean,
Exciting.
even before hockey season is over, if you could put it up on a board at the rec center now, that might be a good way to solicit some feedback too, if we want any.
I love when people tell me what we did wrong. All right.
Okay.
The next one we have is the DHRC programming, and I was obviously excited about this one, so I chatted about that one in the operations piece. This is somewhat of a continuation from the one from last year. So last year we did a lot of operational upgrades, mostly in relation to programming of the system, so we could take more control of it and utilize it a little better. We've seen some great success and result of that, as I mentioned, with the energy savings in the form of natural gas and the greenhouse gas reductions. So this project now is to further the work with that system. The contractor and staff have recognized some potential within that system to for a couple things. One, to expand its capability so that we can utilize it, because what they found with the system that we have is that we're actually generating more than we can even utilize in the recovery. So there is potential that we can expand that, and then to progress that project and basically flip the way the system works, so that in the summertime when our ice plant is not running, we can recover heat from the pool air and use it to heat in the pool water, and then also pull that heat out of the pool air. I don't know if you all remember, but last season we ended up with quite a few closures of the pool, and part of that is because within the design, the dehumidification of that space and any cooling of that space is reliant 100% on outside air. So in the pool space, we don't have mechanical dehumidification or cooling, so we don't have any air conditioning in the space. We can pull air out and replace it with outside air, which traditionally is a lot less humid than it is in the pool. But last season especially, we saw a lot of trouble with that, with the wildfires. Bringing in smoky air from outside was definitely less than desirable. And whenever we tried to reduce the amount of air that we pulled in, we ended up with closures because the humidity ran up so high that it was unsafe for our workers to be. So we ended up with quite a few pool closures last year, unfortunately. And so we're looking to utilize this system as best we can to remove that heat and also be able to remove that humidity, keep the air safe for the workers and the patrons, and without having to come up with a big expenditure for new equipment. And we have a bunch of equipment there that could potentially do that by changing the way it operates a little bit, versus having to go out and install air conditioning or dehumidification mechanically for those spaces. Also worth noting here, this one, the original project funding for this was from reserve fundings. However, after the 2023 work plan, alternative funding through the LGCAP, Local Government Climate Action Program, was available, and determined that would work as well. So that's grant funded. Thank you, Lisa. And then our last one is recreation backup. This one is a carryover from last year as well. It was the installation of a backup generator for more of the systems within the recreation center. Its total here is 200,000 carryover from last year. With that, it was originally 210,000, 10,000 had been utilized from the last year for a pad for where the generator is going to sit. From last year's work, the transfer switch has been shipped, is already here, and we are just waiting on the gen. And that one had a little bit of a delay. It was originally 48-week lead time, but it got pushed back a little bit to 2 months. So it's expected to be here in May.
So can you just remind me the scope of the generator, the size of it? Is it big enough just for the EOC and reception center, or will it run the kitchens, coolers, all of that?
Yeah, it was sized big enough so they could do the whole community hall and the kitchens to make sure that space is all available for purchase.
Okay, good. Thank you.
No problem. Any questions? No? All good?
No, good.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, John. We'll move, I'm gonna mess with you. We're gonna go to tab 41 with Lisa. We've got a bunch of single projects, and then we'll get back to Luann's and she can finish us off.
Is this so like we don't know where
It's getting late in the afternoon. This is just to keep you awake.
Too late. Too late.
This is the result of letting an accountant organize the value.
Well, in the 3 years that I've been here, I've yet to have anything under asset, whatever.
Great.
So here I am. So this is quick. This is resulting from a discussion that we had with council, I believe, in 2023 regarding the motocross club. And this is for acquisition of the land there. So there's been no work completed to date on this other than communicating with the province on what the process will be and the consequences of going ahead with this. So the $42,000 is from reserves, which is what was reflected last year as well.
No question. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Lisa.
Is this a final goodbye?
I don't belong in these departments.
We're gonna jump to tab 38, protective services. There's keep going. This is for the structural protection unit that has a $30,000 grant and $212,000 coming out of general surplus. And then we're gonna move on to tab 39, and we'll let Lou take us through the rest of tab 39 and the rest of the public works.
Okay, so under sewer, it's the wastewater treatment plant addition of screens to Headworks. So this is just a purchase of additional screens so that we can increase our capacity at the Headworks. Currently, if we get too much flow, too much rainwater, too much snow melt, it's possible that we could, I call it spill to the environment, this raw sewage. If we add to the Headworks, these addition of these screens, it will provide us to double our capacity, and that should never. So this one's actually going to be a multi-year one. It's $200,000 to acquire the screens and $150,000 flagged for next year to install them. Also provides an opportunity to look for a grant for this. Any questions on that one? Water, so Toad River Water Supply, that is the potable water project. Any questions on that one? I know you're very familiar with that one. And Public Works. So $70,000 is identified for accessible parking installation. This would just be curbs. Yeah, and did I skip one?
You just didn't tell us which one.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's Erin. She's better at that. Accessible parking installation, so that's in line with the accessibility committee, so, this primarily it's let downs.
43. Yeah.
The next project is the Toad River Community Hall expansion. Essentially, $60,000 identified as the committee or the Toad River Area Club has a pretty strong desire to expand the community hall there and for equipment storage and whatnot. And they need it. So this $60,000 is to provide survey and preliminary design for that building and hopefully seek out some grant opportunities. $140,000 is identified for a fire rescue command vehicle. That's in the event the fire department has an extra body. And then $203,000 is the museum and campground pathway. That's tied to that BC active transportation grant. We haven't heard back from that one. We anticipate sometime this month or next. Tab 45. Let's carry over for the cemetery expansion. We have yet to do a final survey and a little bit of landscaping to take place, and that's it. And that's it.
So that brings us to section 5 of the binder, which is your grants to groups and government transfer section.
Okay. How's everyone making out? Okay. So we're here at the last section, grants to groups and community organizations. It's been mentioned a couple of times that the primary change was removing the golf course and track out. Leaves us with our general grant and aid. One of the things that didn't recur this year was 3 one-time items. Jay might have mentioned it earlier, where groups had come for specific asks prior to budget season last year and were included in the budget. So we've got our grant and aid and then the 3 main community service organizations that we support: the library, theater, and museum. Oh, it's mentioned actually on that slide, the 3 items. So grants to groups. The library budget request has increased over their 2023 request by 14,000. Museum budget request is 8,000 lower than 2023, and the Phoenix is an increase of 4,500 over their 2023 request. I think if we go then to tab 47, the grants to community organizations is then further broken out between the grant and aid of $20,000 and the other common groups that we receive applications for, the Peace Liard Regional Arts Council, Northern Rockies Search and Rescue, and the Seniors Society for funding that we provide for their building. Is there any questions on tab 47? Sure.
I'm just wondering why, so the community, these are the applications that we normally receive. And so Grace Manor, Northern Lights, and Chamber of Commerce haven't requested a.
Well, those were actually 3 one-offs. So within that report, Councillor Dickey, the top 4 are the common or standard amounts that we've seen year to year. Last year, we had three specific amounts, one from Grace Manor, one from the Lamplighters, and one from the Chamber, which were not common. And they weren't repeated this year. They didn't make another ask for those.
Can we finish? So I can go home and read the rest of this?
Yeah, well, we just got two more to go. Two more community groups and then.
Yeah, but they're pretty significant. I haven't read any of them. So,
So Mayor, you're looking at, and reconvene tomorrow? Is that,
that's what I'd like to do, but I'm just asking everybody else, because
I'm booked
I have-
off for the meeting anyways tomorrow. If people require time, I can be available for cut it today and come in tomorrow. And
everybody else. Do I want to proceed or?
I would think we'd be done by then. I can come in tomorrow. I'd rather not, but I will.
And if I'm the only one who hasn't read this stuff, I'm prepared to go. If you are. Okay.
I'm prepared to go, but if you feel it's better to wait, then
Yeah,
then
I'd
would
like to read these applications.
I didn't have a lot of questions, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so if we can, I guess we are recessing, right, and reconvening tomorrow at noon, I'd certainly appreciate that.
Can I just ask one
Sure, sure.
in preparation for tomorrow. My one question on the theater is, I don't, in the the application is totally blank. So but there is a request for like, $189,000. But when I look at the application, it's totally blank. So I'm wondering where that is coming from. And
It-
then, oh, go ahead.
We did notice that as well. Just too late in the game to get that updated. We received a complete application when we turned it into the PDF for the budget presentation. Adobe just wanted to make it blank.
So we've got the electronic version's been updated. It's fully populated and we can create new printed copies for tomorrow if you'd like. Yes.
That'd be great. And then my,
That's not in the package you're saying? 'Cause I've got-
correct, it's empty.
Yeah, so can we have it before tomorrow so I can read it tonight? Okay, thank you. I mean, I can read it electronically if it's there. Yeah, I'll read it electronic. Is that?
And then my only other comment is, on the museum one, they're requesting capital. And so, my question would be around assets that the taxpayer is paying for. And we're approving it for certain asset purchases or repairs on, assets that a community group has. Who owns that? Like, and do we understand that money is going directly to that organization? Right? And so if that organization, whatever it happened to be, dissolved, we don't have a claim on any of that capital. So just a conversation that would be.
Okay, noon, yeah, noon again tomorrow. We are recessed. Thank you very much.